Chapter 749. Seeing Shi Shanshan again, Yang Chen's eyes lit up. Last time, Shi Shanshan had some heart demons entangling her, and her spirit was very tired, and the state was very long. But this time, Fairy Shi was cold and elegant, like a sword out of its sheath, full of heroic spirit, with a different kind of valiance. This is the real Fairy Shi. Yang Chen couldn't help but exclaim, in exchange for Shi Shanshan's rare, slightly charming eyes. Later, Yang Chen was taken to the Lord Tantai. Yang Chen helped the Taishaman interpret the secret key, which was not a secret, and many people knew it. Especially after interpreting the secret key, the Taishaman also made such a big mistake, and the causes and consequences were well known. Although it seemed that there was no direct relationship with Yang Chen, the Lord of Tantai still hoped to know the specific situation. I know that you have made a hard oath, and you can't disclose it to the public. The Lord of Tantai spoke to Yang Chen without the slightest change. It was straightforward and straight to the point. First, the Lord of Tantai and Yang Chen were already acquaintances. Second, with the identity of the Lord of Tantai, he would not go to the extent of playing any small tricks on a younger generation junior. With the relationship between Yang Chen and his own disciple, Shi Shanshan, it was not too difficult to ask anything. I just want to know if my Green Jade Immortal Island wants to get involved. Is there a chance? In the words of the Lord of Tantai, there was no mention of any details, but only one result. It was not Yang Chen who leaked the news. Moreover, the news is already spread all over the place. There was no need to ask Yang Chen for details. The Lord of Tantai just wanted to hear his judgment because Yang Chen was the person who had the most direct contact with the secret key at that time. That was all. This saved Yang Chen a lot of trouble. He didn't have to explain any schemes or tricks, and he didn't have to win the trust of the Island Master. He just had to state his own judgment, and the rest would be decided by the Island Master. Forgive me for not being able to go into too much detail. Yang Chen apologized first. This was the proper courtesy and also a way to show his attitude. After all, it was a great heart demon oath. Although it did not affect him, he could not let others think that he had no qualms about it. This would arouse a lot of suspicion. Speak your mind. The Lord of Tantai was a straightforward person. There was no one else here except for Shi Shanshan. It must have been arranged beforehand. It seemed that the Green Jade Immortal Island was also very envious of the secret plane. Otherwise, there would not be such a situation. There will be great danger, but there will be great rewards. As soon as Yang Chen opened his mouth, it was two facts that everyone understood. This was what the predecessor repeatedly told them, and it was not surprising. Only these. The Lord of Tantai frowned slightly. This news had no meaning for her. It was all information that she already knew. According to this younger generation junior's judgment, at least 5 masters of the Deshang stage are needed. Yang Chen finally said his own judgment, and then added another sentence, and not all of them may come back. Hearing this, the Lord of Tantai's eyes suddenly lit up. Yang Chen said it was a judgment, but with the Lord of Tantai's understanding of Yang Chen was by no means a person who spoke without thinking, so there must be a reason for Yang Chen. But she would never ask Yang Chen's reason at this time. Yang Chen made a great heart demon oath and would not disclose any details. This judgment was inferred based on the details, and it was not included, but it also explained a lot of things. The need for 5 masters of the Deshang stage meant that the initial arrangement of the Taishaman did not need to worry at all, and not all of them would come back, which meant that some people might die. 5 masters of the Deshang stage were likely to lose some of them. So if 2 masters of the Deshang stage made a move without authorization, maybe all of them would die. If the Taishaman lost 2 masters of the Deshang stage, it would be good news for several other sect members. If the masters of their own sect appeared and opened the secret plane, wouldn't the resources inside be in their hands? However, there would be people who could not come back, and the masters of the sect would be reluctant. The Lord of Tantai's mind turned quickly, but he immediately thought of another aspect. There were many masters in the sect, but there were also a few disobedient guys. What was the difference between disobedient masters and no masters? As the Island Master, the Lord of Tantai was also a decisive person, and he immediately had a plan in his heart. He didn't say anything more, but asked Yang Chun with concern, "What are your plans next?" This junior intends to go to the Blue Cloud sect to see little Shui. Yang Chun did not hide his whereabouts, and his words also made the Lord of Tantai think more. What was Yang Chun going to the Blue Cloud sect for? Obviously, he also wanted to say these words to the Blue Cloud sect. At this point, the Lord of Tantai understood that this was because the Chunyang Palace did not want their allies to feel that they were favoring one and discriminating against the other, which was human nature. Since even the Chunyang Palace could think so thoroughly, then the Green Jade Immortal Island, as an ally, naturally could not fall behind. Since they were allies with the Blue Cloud sect, it was not impossible to take down this secret plane together. Anyway, in terms of the benefits of the 100,000 Mountains, everyone was happy to cooperate, and there was no harm in cooperating once more. What made the Lord of Tantai even more tempted was that the Blue Cloud sect also seemed to have a few masters who did not listen to Sect Master Lu. There were 5 or 6 masters on both sides, which was enough to make a difference in the secret plane. Yang Chun did not say which one might not come back, and it was impossible to know where they could not come back. So in this case, it was better to let these disobedient guys try. No matter which one could not come back, it seemed that it was not a bad thing for him and Sect Master Lu. As for these guys who did not listen to the instructions, but the temptation of the resources of the secret plane was in front of them, they would definitely be willing to take such a trip. At that time, as long as a few masters were arranged at the appropriate time, then most of the resources could still fall into the hands of the two sects. Such a wonderful opportunity was simply a gift from the heavens to the two sects. Not only could they weaken the strength of the Taishaman, but they could also clear the hidden dangers in the sect and harvest resources. This kind of good thing that could kill several birds with one stone, where could they find it? The only thing to worry about was that the 5-element sect and Chinkman sect would also intervene, but in any case, their preparation would not be as thorough as the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island. Everyone was a competitor, and a step ahead was a step ahead. It was wonderful to think about it. The Lord of Tantai was now indescribably satisfied with Yang Chun. Don't look at Yang Chun's 2 sentences before and after, but this was said at the risk of violating the Heart Demon Oath. This was an adult invitation the Lord of Tantai absolutely recognized. In this case, Shan Shan and you have not seen each other for a long time. It is better for young people to get along with each other. It is better for you to go together. The Lord of Tantai suggested with a smile. By the way, help me to say hello to Sect Master Lu. Chapter 750. Letting Shan Shan and Yang Chun go together. The decision of the Lord of Tantai seemed to be quite worth pondering. If it was in the past when Yang Chun went to the Blue Cloud sect and took Shan Shan with him, it was nothing more than giving people the feeling that Shan Shan and Yang Chun had a closer relationship, slightly showing off to Sun Qingxue. Of course, the root cause was still the means of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect to win over Yang Chun, a master of alchemy. But this time, letting Shan Shan accompany Yang Chun seemed to have a different flavor, especially the last sentence, to greet Sect Master Lu, which was even more mysterious. Yang Chun could almost conclude that the Lord of Tantai had some thoughts, and it was estimated that he wanted to take this opportunity to let Shan Shan's appearance show her attitude. After removing the Heart Devil, when Shan Shan and Yang Chun were alone together, there was no longer that kind of cold expression, and it was a lot softer. On Yang Chun's shuttle, Shan Shan still played the role of the tea maker, like a wife serving her husband, carefully preparing the fragrant tea for Yang Chun. While I was traveling around these years, I also collected a few spirit springs and found a few tea trees. You can help me taste it. When Shan Shan said this, it was after pouring the first cup for Yang Chun. I remember you like this flavor. It was rare that Shan Shan could care about what flavor of tea Yang Chun liked, which was not a small progress. At least in the memory of Yang Chun's previous life, there was no lucky guy who was so concerned by Shan Shan. Usually, the man that Shan Shan paid attention to would soon become a dead man. Yang Chun enjoyed Shan Shan's service happily and even gave his judgment as if it was a matter of fact. Speaking of which, with Yang Chen's knowledge and reading of various miscellaneous books, the things he said in this regard were very meaningful and pointed to the key points, which made sure Shanshan nod repeatedly. No matter how good the taste was, one would eventually get tired of it if they only enjoyed one. Sure Shanshan's method was very correct. She collected all kinds of tea trees and spiritual spring water and matched them with different flavors. Every time she changed it, it was also a supreme enjoyment. Sun Qingxue didn't like the tea ceremony that much. She took a sip and then happily presented it to Yang Chun, who had just arrived. I've asked people to buy a few special wineries in various places. You can drink whatever flavor of wine you want. Every year, I'll save a few hundred jars for you. After a few years, you'll be able to enjoy it. Sure Shanshan liked tea, but Sun Qingxue liked wine under the influence of Yang Chun. She was born in a big family, and her capacity for alcohol has always been good. She could accompany Yang Chun to have a drink. However, Sun Qingxue always knew how to control her own volume. A beautiful woman drinking a small drink could increase the interest, but if she drank too much, it would be very ugly. Vaguely, the two women had some tit-for-tat meaning. In the past, whether it was Sure Shanshan or Sun Qingxue, when they were together with Yang Chun provided tea and wine, but this time, the two women had their own preparations. However, this tit-for-tat did not last too long. The news that Yang Chun came to Blue Cloud Sect had already reached Sect Master Lu. Soon, Elder Hua Wanting appeared in person and brought Yang Chun to Sect Master Lu. Facing Sect Master Lu alone, Yang Chun was not flustered. After Elder Hua brought Yang Chun over, he didn't know where he went. There were only two people here, Yang Chun and Sect Master Lu. And Yang Chun clearly found that there were at least a dozen restrictions around. What did you say to the Lord of Tantai? You can also say it to me. Sect Master Lu seemed to have expected that the Lord of Tantai and Yang Chun had communicated with each other, and he also said this to Yang Chun straightforwardly. In his previous life, Yang Chun never expected that he would one day be able to communicate with the Blue Cloud Sect Master or the Green Jade Immortal Islands Island Master alone. This was the treatment that only the big figures of those big sects had. In this life, this has happened several times, and Yang Chun is somewhat accustomed to it. The same short words, the same judgment tone, came out of Yang Chun's mouth again. Yang Chun didn't say a word more, and he didn't use a little more affirmative tone. It must be said that people who can be in a high position often have the same thinking, and the starting point is the same. Soon Sect Master Lu realized the opportunity and also understood the intention of the Lord of Tantai to let Sure Shanshan come to visit and bring her greetings. Yang Chun would definitely not intervene in the specific arrangements. Anyway, there was an excuse of the Heart Demon Oath. There was no need to say a lot of reasons to convince the two sect, as long as he said his own judgment. This saved Yang Chun a lot of trouble. He still had a headache about it, but now it was solved. The goal was achieved, and Yang Chun was also relaxed. He was enjoying the tea and wine with Sure Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, and it was a mess. Recently, the Blue Cloud Sect seemed to have an auction, and Yang Chun also planned to stay and take a look. Although the secret message left on the secret key of the Taishuman's secret plane was very tempting, it was obvious that this was not the best time for Yang Chun to act. Now, there must be a lot of people staring at his whereabouts, looking forward to him going out to find a certain legendary treasure, and then the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Although Yang Chun has already made an oath with his heart demon, there would definitely be people who did not believe it. This was human nature. The great vow of the heart's demons would only be fulfilled during the tribulation transcendence. Many people did not even think that they would one day face the tribulation transcendence. Therefore, even if it was the great vow of the heart's demons, some people did not take it to heart. Perhaps they thought that Yang Chun and their ideas were the same. So after Yang Chun left the Green Jade Immortal Island, there were many people following. Yang Chun's shuttle did not fly much. At least dozens of people were carefully following behind, wanting to take advantage of it. If it weren't for seeing Yang Chun and the Cold Plum Fairy Sure Shanshan together, maybe someone would really make a move. Since Yang Chun was proficient in ancient texts and was well-read, it was said that he had found several secret planes recorded in the records, so maybe there was a similar place. As long as they caught Yang Chun, they would not have to worry about not getting this information from his mouth. Fortunately, Yang Chun's goal was the Blue Cloud sect, and no one dared to make a move. If they made a move on Yang Chun and Shi Shanshan and the Blue Cloud sect, it was not a treasure hunt, but a direct challenge to the two sect. Yang Chun had long discovered this, so he was very careful to arrange his plan. This trend was actually easy to stop. As long as the secret plane of the Taishaman was opened, naturally many people would no longer pay attention to Yang Chun. However, if everyone really wanted to let go, it would take another means. The Thunderous means let everyone know that Yang Chun was not a soft persimmon, nor was he good to provoke. If they wanted to make a move on Yang Chun, they had to consider whether they could afford to pay that price. Chapter 751, Blue Cloud Sect and Green Jade Immortal Island. After all, according to Yang Chen's thoughts, each sent 3 masters of the Deshang stage to join hands to rush to the secret plane. Before departure, the 2 sect masters also quickly contacted each other and explained the sect's ardent hopes and the intention of cooperation between the 2 sides to their respective masters. The temptation of the huge resources in the secret plane and the possible inheritance breakthrough opportunities, the 6 masters were looking forward to it. They originally thought that this kind of good thing would not have their chance. After all, they and their respective sect masters did not deal with each other, but they did not expect that the sky would fall a meat pie. The others are busy and can't spare manpower. It's been hard on you. Sect Master Lu said this. They didn't know how the Lord Tantai expressed it. It was estimated that it was similar to the meaning. The 2 sect masters repeatedly stressed that the secret plane was dangerous and they must unite to deal with it. No one would doubt that there was any problem in it. The 6 masters themselves would never believe that the sect would give up a master of the Deshang stage like them. One by one, they seemed to be complacent and even expressed their loyalty. Then they set off together. Yang Chun doesn't care about the development of these situations. He is now trapped in another gentle place, almost unable to extricate himself. It seems that before Yang Chun went to see Sect Master Lu, the 2 women, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, still had some faint confrontation. One let him taste tea, the other let him drink wine. Although the cold and unparalleled Fairy Shi and the young and charming Fairy Sun did not show the posture of a worldly concubine competing for favor, there was also a little sign. After returning to Sun Qingxue's residence from Sect Master Lu, Yang Chun was a little surprised. The 2 women seemed to have suddenly restored the kind of intimate relationship they had a long time ago, sister and sister, as if there was no estrangement. For Yang Chun, the 2 women still maintained their respective attitudes, but it was obvious that there was a cooperative atmosphere. Yang Chun didn't know what happened during this time. The only thing he suspected was Elder Hua Wanning. She must have said something to the 2 women during his talks with Sect Master Lu, which led to this. This feeling made Yang Chun infatuated. Yang Chun certainly didn't want the 2 women to have any estrangement because of him. That was good for now. After the auction, Yang Chun simply took the 2 women out to the sea to travel, while collecting some marine elixirs, and at the same time, gaining experience. After a short period of 3 months, news finally came from the secret plane. It was just as Yang Chun had expected. Taishaman sent 2 masters of the Deshang stage with about 10 Yuanying stage ancestors to rush to the secret plane first. In order to monopolize the resources of the secret land, they wanted to forcibly open the secret land before the other big sect reacted. The method of opening the secret plane provided by Yang Chun was not wrong. In the same way, there was no mistake in the great danger inside. Even if it required a great opportunity to get it, there was no mistake. The mistake was that the description of these dangers was too simple. A great danger really couldn't make everyone be cautious. The secret plane was open, but the moment it was opened, it triggered a protective formation, which directly turned a master of the Deshang stage into ashes, and the other was seriously injured and unconscious. Whether he could be saved or not was another thing. Of the 10 Yuanying stage ancestors, at least 6 disappeared on the spot, and the remaining 4 were all injured. Fortunately, Taishaman also had a group of Jidan stage masters on the scene. When the secret plane was opened, in order to prevent people from disturbing them, these Jidan stage masters were scattered around and were not affected. It was precisely because of this that these people could save several injured people in a critical moment. The loss of a master of the Deshang stage plus 6 Yuanying stage ancestors made Taishaman want to cry, but have no tears. But since they have paid such a big price, the resources of this secret plane must definitely be grabbed. Under the pressure, Taishaman once again gritted their teeth and sent 3 masters of the Deshang stage, hurrying to the secret plane. But at this time, it was already too late. The 5 Elements sect, Chinquin sect, including the people of Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island, also began to arrive. However, after all, the news was somewhat unequal. The 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect only sent a master of the Deshang stage. On the contrary, the alliance of the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island was the strongest. 6 masters of the Deshang stage, plus a bunch of Yuanying stage masters, almost directly led the exploration of the secret plane. It would take a few months for them to go back and forth, and it was too late to transfer people from the sect. Under the strong leadership of the 6 masters of the Deshang stage, Taishaman, the 5 Elements sect, and the Chinquin sect also had to lower their proud heads and agree to jointly explore the secret plane and share the benefits. In fact, whether it was the 5 Elements sect or the Chinquin sect, everyone knew that the news of this secret plane was leaked from the Taishaman, but they did not expect it to be so dangerous. They were already very satisfied to be able to get a piece of the pie. Only the Taishaman were really hateful. The things that were in their mouths were actually taken advantage of by others. This breath was really unbearable. However, the situation was stronger than people, and the Taishaman had just lost a master and a half of the Deshang stage. Even if they wanted to fight, they were powerless. Especially looking at the appearance of several other masters of the sect, it seemed that as long as they did not agree, they would swarm up and destroy them. In this situation, there was no other way but to bow their heads. Between the big sect, everyone's competition was also very fierce, especially at this time. Everyone understood that the other party would definitely seize every opportunity to eliminate possible opponents. Even if a simple agreement was reached, they were still careful everywhere. 11 masters of the Deshang stage teamed up to open the secret plane again. This time, there was a lesson from the past. Under everyone's careful precautions, the protective array at the entrance of the secret plane did not bring any casualties. After entering the secret plane, a group of masters found that the secret plane was very large and the resources were indeed rich. So they split up and each divided the direction to collect. Then, the tragedy appeared again. No matter which direction, there was a powerful protective array. The 2 masters of the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect were directly eliminated by the array. Taishaman's Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island were not much better. Taishaman once again lost a Deshang stage master, while the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island lost 3. The remaining 3 were all injured and desperately escaped from the secret plane. The Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island were already prepared, and the follow-up reinforcements appeared only 10 days later. There were also 6 masters of the Deshang stage. This time, they directly took over the secret plane. According to the number of masters left, the resources of the secret plane were divided into 11 parts. Taishaman had 2, Blue Cloud sect had 5, and the Green Jade Immortal Island had 4. The various masters joined forces to collect in one direction, and finally all the resources were divided up. Just as Trip made the sect master of Taishaman almost vomit blood. They lost 2.5 masters of the Deshang stage, but they only got less than 1/5 of the resources. Taishaman had never suffered such a big loss. Chapter 752. When the third batch of reinforcements of the Taishaman rushed over, it was only too late to pick up the 2 injured Deshang stage elders. The people of the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island had already rushed back to their respective sect with a large number of harvests. This time, the Taishaman could be said to have suffered a double loss. two masters of the Deshang stage directly fell, and one was still in a coma. Even if he could wake up, his realm would plummet. It could be said that three masters of the Deshang stage were lost in this way. The remaining two masters were also seriously injured. Without 100 or 200 years of recovery, it was impossible to return to their peak state. Going back and forth, it was directly equivalent to that within 100 or 200 years. The Taishaman suddenly lost 5 masters of the Deshang stage. The entire Taishaman, the number of masters of the Deshang stage, was only 6 or 7. This was equivalent to directly removing more than half of the highest power of the Taishaman. But in exchange, they only received a trivial 1/5 of the resources of the secret plane. The sect master and the elders almost cried out. The Taishaman, the number 1 sect of the Tao sects under their control, did not advance but retreated. Not only the younger generation of disciples were hit hard, but now even the top forces were also damaged. One day they would ascend. How could they face the ancestors of the Taishaman? However, this kind of thing, the Taishaman could not find the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island. Yes, the news of the secret plane was obtained by the Taishaman, but if they did not block the good news and leaked it out, then it was no wonder that everyone would rush up. If it could be confirmed that this was the secret plane left by the predecessors of the Taishaman could of course ask all the sect not to act rashly. But unfortunately, almost everyone who got the news could prove that this secret plane had nothing to do with the Taishaman. The ancient sect had nothing to do with the Taishaman. If they had to say something, it was that the Taishaman got the key to the secret plane and interpreted it. That's all. However, since it was an ownerless item, it belonged to whoever obtained it. It was not that the other sect did not give the Taishaman a chance. In fact, in the beginning, if the Taishaman could concentrate on breaking the secret zone, they might only bear a small loss and get all the resources. In fact, in Yang Chen's memories from his previous life, the Taishaman did exactly that. They probably lost 1 or 2 experts, but the rewards were amazing. Otherwise, the Taishaman would not have been able to advance so quickly. However, everyone had neglected the great danger within the warning, which resulted in such a bitter outcome. It was not only the Taishaman who were unlucky. Strictly speaking, the most unlucky ones were the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect. They each lost a master of the Deshang stage, but they got nothing. Even the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island also lost 2 Deshang stage masters on one side and 1 on the other side, and the 6 who went in the early stage were all seriously injured. Basically, like the Taishaman, they suffered heavy losses. Within 100 or 200 years, whether the 3 seriously injured masters of the Deshang stage could recover was still another matter. However, the 2 major sects were lucky. The sect attached more importance to the danger in the news. At the beginning, they dispatched enough masters so they got most of the resources in the secret plane, which could barely be regarded as a slight supplement. The key was still at the last moment, or from the beginning. The Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island joined forces to solve the problem. The combined strength occupied the absolute dominant position, which was why there was such a harvest. Except for the 2 major sects themselves, no one knew what resources they had obtained, but every sect went back with a gloomy look. It seemed that almost all of them had suffered heavy losses. Even if the Taishaman wanted to pursue it, who should they look for? They couldn't come to the door and clamor that others robbed the things that belonged to the Taishaman, right? That thing was not the Taishaman's. It was an ownerless thing. Anyone could take it. It seemed unreasonable to say that others did not help their fellow Taoists at the critical moment. They also lost several masters of the Deshang stage, which was also a real high-end power. It was not a show. This accusation was absolutely unreasonable. As a last resort, the Taishaman also had to unite with the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect to talk with the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island about the redistribution of the resources of the secret plane. In this regard, the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect were standing on the side of the Taishaman. After all, they died but did not get any gains. But soon the alliance became loose and then broke. The Taishaman had always been aloof, and there were also many secret competitions between the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect. The incident in the desolate valley had fully explained the attitude of the Taishaman. In addition, the Taishaman's five-element sect and the Chinkoan sect both requested to redistribute the gains, but the distribution plan could not be recognized by everyone. Equal distribution? The five sect would each get a fifth of the resources. The Taishaman now got almost one-fifth of the resources. It was the five-element sect and the Chinkoan sect that benefited. How could the Taishaman agree? Yes, the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island would grow stronger, but after getting one-fifth of the resources, the Taishaman also knew what this pile of resources meant for the sect. If the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island could develop to the point where they could compete with the Taishaman by getting these resources, then the five-element sect and the Chinkoan sect could definitely do the same. The five-element sect and the Chinkoan sect only lost a master of the Dashang stage each. Wasn't this the Taishaman themselves bringing two more competitors? Therefore, the equal distribution naturally could not satisfy everyone. The Taishaman would not propose it. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect would not agree at all. Only the five-element sect and the Chinkoan sect proposed it, but they were rejected by the three sections. Most of them disagreed and naturally could not accept it. Distribution according to the strength dispatched? Before and after, the Taishaman used 5 masters of the Dashang stage, while the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect each had 6. Counting the 2 from the five-element sect and the Chinkoan sect, if it was evenly distributed, the five-element sect and the Chinkoan sect could get 1/20th, and the Taishaman could get more, 1/4. Speaking of which, the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island occupied the majority. Distribution according to the number of masters lost? The five-element sect and the Chinkoan sect each lost a master of the Dashang stage. The Taishaman lost 2, the Green Jade Immortal Island lost 2, and the Blue Cloud sect lost 1. It seemed that this plan was good, but the Taishaman and the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island did not agree. The loss was not only the dead, but also the seriously injured. The Taishaman even had 6 Yuanying stage masters. How should this be counted? In short, everyone's strength was about the same, and no one wanted to give up. This redistribution naturally ended in failure. In fact, everyone knew that how could it be possible to spit out what was in the mouth? Even if the Taishaman always wanted to redistribute, they were not willing to take out everything. Chapter 753. Everyone had their own ulterior motives, and this discussion was naturally unsettled. Whether it was the Taishaman or the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island, they were constantly complaining. They lost their own people, but they did not get anything. At that time, when they divided the booty in the secret plane, they did not divide the booty by seeing the things, but chose several directions. At that time, there were almost a dozen portals in the secret plane. Everyone was divided according to the number of portals. As for what was inside, except for the people who entered, no one else knew. In this way, there was an argument. The Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island said that several portals were empty. Only 1 or 2 portals had things, and most of the things were on the Taishaman's side. The Taishaman on the other side said that they did not get anything, and the good things were in the portals controlled by the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island. Anyway, they didn't know what they got. Everyone quarreled, even if in the end, no matter what method was used to divide it, it was estimated that they could take out 1% of the things. Soon, several major sects stopped this meaningless quarrel and dispersed. As a result, among the 5 major sects, except for the relationship between the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, which was still so tacit, the other 3 were somewhat scattered and confrontational. In fact, it has always been like this before, and now was just an additional reason. On the surface, it was the 5-element sect and the Chinkoan sect who were unlucky, and the Taishaman, Blue Cloud sect, and the Green Jade Immortal Island were lucky. Although they lost their masters, they were also compensated. But the one who was really happy was Yang Chun, who directed all this, and the head of the palace and the elders of the Chunyang Palace who were watching the excitement in the dark. The past few months could be described as turbulent and turbulent. Last time, Chunyang Palace invited 9 masters of the Dashang stage to deal with the 100,000 mountains, which was already a big scene. This time, there were 19 masters of the Dashang stage who were dispatched before and after. 7 were killed and 6 were seriously injured. Only 6 Dashang stage masters of the second batch of people from the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island returned. The Yuanying stage masters of the various sects had lost more than a dozen, and there were also more than a dozen in the Jedon stage. The result was tragic. Even in the great calamity of the demonic cultivation, it had never appeared. This was a truly grand scene. The people of Chunyang Palace should be happy. Everything was orchestrated by the disciples of their own sect. The Taishamen suffered heavy casualties, their gains were limited, and their strength declined again. Their allies seemed to have lost a few experts as well, but they were all people who didn't listen to orders from their sect master. Moreover, they received great compensation in terms of resources, and their strength increased. In this way, there was no reason for Chunyang Palace to be unhappy. Moreover, Yang Chan made it clear from the beginning that his family could not eat it. Instead of benefiting the Taishamen, it was better to benefit his allies. Now that almost all of his goals had been achieved, was there anything more perfect than this? Yang Chun was very satisfied these days. Under the accompaniment of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, they toured the mountains and rivers, saying that they were going to collect marine elixirs. But most of the time, Yang Chun and the 2 women were traveling along the coastline near the sea, while looking for some spirit spring tea trees or looking for some good wine, while casually collecting some marine elixirs that were not very old. And at the same time, they also heard the news about the secret plane from time to time. The days were too leisurely. It must be known that whether it was Yang Chun or the Blue Cloud sect, the Green Jade Immortal Island, the cooperation with the Wine Immortal House was very good, and these news could be sent to them at any time. It was not that no one was tracking them, but the 3 of them didn't care. If the 3 of them were alone, there might be people looking for trouble, but the 3 of them were together, and there was no such thing as taking the risk of offending the 3 major sects at the same time. Although the 2 women still had the same attitude as before, the flattery hidden under that attitude could be felt at any time. Even if Yang Chun didn't really hug them on both sides, but he took the 2 beauties to travel with him, which had already made countless young talents who were not worse than Yang Chun gnash their teeth in hatred. When the news from everywhere confirmed that the secret plane incident was almost completed, it was already half a year later. In the past 6 months, Yang Chun and the 2 women traveled together, traveling around the world, pointing out the rivers and mountains, and they had a very happy time. But now everyone was finally going to separate. The 2 women had to go back to the sect to see. After all, such a big thing happened, and the masters of the Dashang stage were lost. It was reasonable for them to go back. After reluctantly saying goodbye to Yang Chun, the 2 women embarked on their way back, and Yang Chun once again became a lonely person. This time, the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island got a lot of things, and it's hard to guarantee that there are medicinal materials for the questioning inner heart pill. Among the Taishamen, the sect master with a serious face told several elders, "We can't give him a chance to get the questioning inner heart pill. Find Yang Chun and kill him. Do it cleanly." When an elder was about to arrange it, the sect master suddenly gave another order. The elder nodded silently and went out. Although the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island also lost their masters of the Dashang stage, they had the questioning inner heart pill in their hands, and maybe they could create more masters of the Dashang stage. Under this situation, the dilemma of the Taishamen could be imagined. This time, the Taishamen were going to kill Yang Chun at all costs. In addition to this reason, there was one thing that was very uncomfortable in everyone's heart. That was, the secret key was interpreted by Yang Chun. Although the guiding array was activated in the Taishamen, the result made the Taishamen somewhat embarrassed. When they closed the mountain, they offended a lot of cultivators who came to the Taishamen to do business, but in the end, they did not achieve the effect, but it became the current situation. All of this seems to be because of Yang Chun. If Yang Chun didn't know those ancient characters, wouldn't there be no such thing? At this time, as long as it was related to this matter, almost all of them would be angry. And Yang Chun, who was the thorn in the eyes of the Taishamen, was regarded as the first target to vent their anger. Yang Chun was controlling the flight of the shuttle, and he was planning to return to the Chunyang Palace. Suddenly, the group of spiritual awareness marks in the sea of consciousness, which was surrounded by the spiritual awareness threads, shook again, reminding Yang Chun that someone had begun to pay attention to his whereabouts again. For a long time, Yang Chun was very curious about what kind of person spiritual awareness was it. It could ignore the spiritual awareness threads that were cultivated by his 3 purity secret art. So he has been keeping this spiritual awareness mark. He wanted to find its owner and see what kind of ability he had. Unexpectedly, he had such a strange spiritual awareness cultivation base. But the continuous exploration of his own whereabouts made Yang Chun a little angry. If the tiger doesn't show its power, do you really think he's a sick cat? If someone wanted to come to the door, Yang Chun was not afraid at all. After condensing his Dan with all attributes, he needed to vent. But he couldn't let the other party find him so easily. Yang Chun made up his mind and directly threw the spiritual awareness mark into the bloody river. Chapter 754. At the same time as Yang Chun was angry, among the Taishamen, a seemingly very young Jidan stage disciple was sitting on a futon, suddenly screamed, and then the whole person fainted without warning. The surrounding group of people immediately panicked and hurriedly helped the young man to the luxurious jade couch. Then, a few of them began to examine him with spirit power and divine sense almost simultaneously, while a few others tried to wake up the fainted young man. Among the few people around, there was even a Yuanying stage ancestor. Under normal circumstances, if it was just a simple coma, as long as spiritual power was stimulated and at most some medicinal pills were added, people could be easily awakened. However, what was surprising was that the young man who fell into a coma, no matter what these people did, they could not wake him up. The group of people were busy for a long time, and they all showed expressions of looking at each other. Some even had sweat on their faces. As for the few guys who should have been slaves, all of them had expressions of horror on their faces. In the end, the Yuanying stage ancestor made a decision for everyone. After frowning and thinking for a while, he ordered a servant, "Go and report to the sect master. Say that the young sect master suddenly fainted and can't be saved." If Yang Chun was there, he would be able to recognize this young man who was not small. He was the young sect master of the Taishamen who used to oppress people, but was finally killed by Yang Lan secretly and framed Yang Chun. The young sect master, Li Hung, was not a genius in cultivation, but he had a special physique so that he could cultivate a unique cultivation method of spiritual awareness among the Taishamen. This cultivation method could make the spiritual awareness grow at a speed that exceeded the spiritual power cultivation, and the spiritual awareness cultivated was very strange, and the direction was very obvious. The people who were marked by Li Hung's spiritual awareness were almost undetectable. Through a unique formation, it was easy to find the location of the spiritual awareness mark. Li Hung's spiritual awareness cultivation base had reached the realm of the middle Yuanying stage, and it was somewhat comparable to the sect master. Relying on this unique directional feature, the Greatest Heaven sect has secretly tracked and solved more than a dozen opponents, none of which were discovered. This kind of spiritual consciousness tempering cultivation method was too special. Without a unique and rare physique like Li Hung, it was almost impossible to cultivate it successfully. According to the experience of the senior who created this cultivation art could elevate one's spiritual sense to the pinnacle of the grand ascension stage at the nascent soul stage, and one's spiritual sense could even enter the spirit realm for an extremely short period of time under certain conditions. If there was someone in the spiritual realm to receive them, they could even use this short opportunity to enter the spiritual realm to communicate with the experts there. Even if it was only for an instant, the mental communication was enough to bring important information. This was even more convenient than sending a consciousness clone from the immortal world to the mortal world. A long time ago, the Taishamen were able to rise to power. This was a very important and crucial factor. With the support of the upper realm, it would be much easier than struggling in the mortal world. This was also one of the reasons why Li Hung was made the young sect master at such a young age. With this unique cultivation method, When Li Liheng grew to the middle yuanying stage, or even higher, it would definitely bring more earth-shaking changes to the Taishaman. However, the conditions for the cultivation of this cultivation method were so harsh that apart from the ancient ancestor, it was not until now that he had found a suitable disciple to cultivate. In this case, Li Liheng's position in the Taishaman was simply like a rock, and no one could shake it. All the resources were tilted to Li Liheng. In Taishaman, Li Liheng could be said to have the wind and rain. It was because of Li Liheng's importance that Li Liheng was killed by Yang Lan in the previous life and blamed on Yang Chun, which led to the destruction of the Chunyang Palace by the Taishaman in a rage. Of course, at that time, Gao Yu's qualifications and stunning beauty did cause the sect master to covet her. As for the 10,000 years vermilion fruit, it was entirely Yang Lan's work. In order to rely on Li Liheng, he did not hesitate to give his sister Yang Lan to Li Liheng to let Li Liheng play with her, and came up with a lot of crooked ideas. The 10,000 years vermilion fruit was what Yang Lan wanted, but he told Li Liheng that it was a kind of 9 heavens lotus fruit that could increase the cultivation of spiritual awareness. After the matter was exposed, he had to kill Li Liheng and then blame Yang Chun. Of course, Yang Chun would not know the inside story of this. The special cultivation method that Li Liheng cultivated was only known to the sect master and the 2 law protector elders. Others did not know the existence of this cultivation method at all. So much so that in order to protect Li Liheng, rumors that Li Liheng was the illegitimate son of the sect master were released. However, at this moment, Li Liheng, the young sect master who was very important to the Taishaman, fainted and could not wake up. The sect master who received the news was shocked. An elder of the Deshang stage also saw Li Liheng's situation, but he had no way to wake him up. Several elders who came with the sect master after hearing the news all looked at it once, but there was nothing they could do. How could this be? How could this be? The sect master murmured, and the anxiety in his expression was not concealed. A few people who did not know the truth saw it in their eyes, and their hearts were even more convinced of the rumors that the sect master was an illegitimate son. Otherwise, how could the sect master be so anxious? Of course, none of them dared to say anything, but all of them were thinking about how to flatter the young sect master in the future. How did you serve the young sect master? After a series of inspections, there was no result, and the sect master was furious. Nothing went well these days. The troubles of the secret plane were not over yet, and Li Liheng fainted inexplicably. Could it be that God wanted the Taishaman to experience hardships? Several guys who served the young sect master were all scared to kneel on the ground, and their bodies were shaking like a sieve. Everyone knew that everything in the Taishaman was not going well recently, and the sect master was upset. Now that they served the young sect master like this, even if they did not die, they would have to peel off a layer of skin. Sect master. The young sect master fainted very strangely, not necessarily related to them. The yuanying stage ancestor, who first reported to the sect master, spoke up for the slaves at this time. He was also one of the people present at the time, plus the identity of the yuanying stage ancestor. His words also had a certain weight. I am afraid there are other reasons. No one would think that at this moment, the spiritual awareness imprint left by the young sect master on Yang Chun's body was being immersed in the blood river by Yang Chun. If Yang Chun did not take it out for a moment, the young sect master would not wake up for a moment. Feeling that this guy had suffered enough, Yang Chun finally pulled out the spiritual awareness mark, still wrapped in the spiritual awareness silk, and threw it aside. At this time, he did not want people to die, and he also looked forward to using this thing to catch a few more big fish. Chapter 755. More than a dozen figures, men and women, looked like a group of rogue cultivators, followed by an old man with a compass at the front, flying on their swords. Among these people, the worst one was also at the peak of the Jidan stage. 7 or 8 masters at the peak of the Jidan stage, plus 7 or 8 masters at the early and middle stages of the yuanying stage, each holding a golden ball in his left hand. In his right hand was a variety of magic weapons. He is flying in this direction. As soon as we meet him, trap him with a twisted golden net, and kill him immediately. The old man in front looked at the compass, and seemed to be estimating the change in the distance from Yang Chun, and ordered, "Everyone spread out. The guy's flying magic weapon is very fast. I am afraid one or two twisted golden nets can't trap him." The old man attached great importance to this action and kept saying, "On the sea, he may have a unique trump card, so this time on the ground. Once any twisted golden net works, immediately trap him with a formation and kill him. Show no mercy." The men and women behind him seemed to be used to his nagging. No one said anything, not even a sound of agreement. They just spread out tacitly, basically covering all directions. "Quick hide." After a while, the old man looked at the compass and suddenly ordered. A group of men and women flashed with a ray of light, and then the figures disappeared in the air one by one, as if they had never appeared. The robes on each of them were specially refined and could activate a stealth formation to hide the owner. Yang Chen's shuttle soon appeared on the horizon, drawing a thin line in the air with almost no trace, and came close. Then, under the puzzled gaze of a group of people in the dark, it suddenly stopped. The shuttle flashed, and Yang Chen's figure appeared in the air, holding the blood phantom vine flying sword in his hand, looking coldly in front of him. "Do it." Yang Chen's behavior obviously showed that he had found something. The old man did not go to investigate where he had exposed himself and decisively ordered to start. Pung, pung, pung. A series of sounds sounded, and in several directions of Yang Chen, a large golden net burst. With unparalleled speed, the huge net quickly wrapped around Yang Chen's body. Yang Chen only glanced at them. Facing the dozen or so golden nets, his body did not move at all, allowing the nets to wrap around him tightly from all directions. They did not expect such a result at all. After the group of male and female masters threw the golden ball of the twisted gold net, they all thought that Yang Chen would dodge, and each of them made a response to dodge. However, after the group of people was done, they were shocked to find that Yang Chen did not move at all. This made their previous response very comical. But no matter what, the people who did it were still secretly delighted. No one knew the power of these twisted gold nets better than them. As long as one was entangled by the twisted gold nets, even a high-speed flying sword without the sharpness of a magic weapon would not be able to get rid of it. It would only become tighter and tighter, and eventually one would lose the ability to move. One or two might have to worry about some magic weapons, but if more than a dozen of them were entangled, even if it was a master of the Deshang stage, they would have to be obediently tied up. The twisted gold net was not only a strong big net. The barbs on it and the poison on the barbs were enough to send the masters of the Deshang stage to the underworld. The blow was effective, and everyone was secretly happy. Although they didn't know why Yang Chen would suddenly put away the shuttle at this time, they didn't care what reason Yang Chen had. What they wanted was to kill Yang Chen cleanly, as long as they did so. Even if more than a dozen twisted gold nets were enough to kill Yang Chen, none of these people hesitated. All the magic weapons in their hands flew out and smashed towards Yang Chen's head. As long as the person died, it would be a waste. However, when everyone was smashing their magic weapons, and they were also flying up, they suddenly heard the voice of Yang Chen. "I am very unhappy now, but thank you for coming to my door to let me vent my anger." Yang Chen's voice was full of killing intent, followed by a sentence, "Every injustice has its perpetrator. Every debt has its debtor." After the words, Yang Chen had not finished completely. A series of magic weapons had been smashed down. On the surface of Yang Chen's body, the golden light flashed slightly. Everyone didn't seem to see the difference between this golden light and the golden light of the twisted gold net, but they heard a dull bell sound. Buzz, the long and low bell sound, with a power to penetrate the soul, penetrated into everyone's sea of consciousness. Everyone seemed to hear the sound of the golden bell ringing in their ears, and then a few guys with weak spiritual awareness directly fainted and fell from the air. Originally, Yang Chen thought that everyone would be stunned by the golden bell, but the old man miraculously remained awake. But even so, there was a glint of horror in his eyes. Then, it became a kind of cutting off the means of retreat. The whole body turned into a streamer. The tip of the streamer flashed a hint of silver, flying toward Yang Chen's heart. Hey, a slight sound like a sharp blade cutting through tofu. Yang Chen's arm was lifted easily, originally wrapped in Yang Chen's body. Everyone thought that the dozens of twisted gold nets under the blade of Xiao Tian's blood demon vine flying sword were as fragile as a few pieces of paper, easily broken. Yang Chen's right hand raised the blood demon vine flying sword high and slammed down at the old man's figure. Ding, a sound of metal collision. The streamer first hit Yang Chen's chest, but only brought such a crisp sound. There was no other effect. Yang Chen's flying sword directly divided the old man's figure into two pieces. Before the two pieces of the corpse fell to the ground, it had become a dry appearance. The dozen or so guys who fainted, Yang Chen, as before, sealed their five senses and threw them into the dome hall. These people were definitely the periphery of the Taishaman. Through them, Yang Chen could find more hidden people of the Taishaman. After cleaning up these killers, Yang Chen threw the seized things into the mouth of Xiao Tian and let it clean up the spiritual awareness imprints that may be left. Only one was killed, which made Yang Chen very unsatisfied. He knew that he would not use the golden bell to stun them. The more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable he was. He couldn't help but throw the spiritual awareness imprint of the blood river in his sea of consciousness into the blood river again. The young sect master Li Hung, who had just woken up, had just sent away the sect master and several elders. He was taking a rest under the service of the servants. He was about to get up and do something. Suddenly, the feeling of horror came again. Li Hung only had time to scream and once again softly collapsed on the ground. Chapter 756. The Taishaman didn't know what kind of bad luck they had. Because of the secret plane, there were heavy casualties here, and they didn't know how to settle them for a while. The young sect master over there was in a coma for a few days, which almost made the high-level people worried. The young sect master Li Hung, of course, knew his importance. He was in a coma for no reason, and he couldn't wake up no matter how hard he tried. If there was a problem for the Taishaman, it was simply one less future pillar. Even those who didn't know were guessing that the illegitimate son of the sect master was in trouble. Some flattered, some secretly snickered, and so on. Anyway, their minds are not used on the business. Li Hung's coma was indeed a head-scratcher, and there was no reason at all. As for Li Hung himself, how could he think that a spiritual awareness mark he had thrown out would make him suffer such consequences? It's not that Li Hung couldn't think of it. It's just that his cultivation method was special. So far, he has thrown out no less than thousands of spiritual awareness marks. Each mark could be tracked by a unique compass, and it was not easy to be discovered by the person who planted the spiritual awareness mark. This was originally the secret weapon of the Taishaman. Who could have thought that someone would be like Yang Chen, not only find a spiritual awareness mark, but also use this spiritual awareness mark to deal with him? Even if everyone asked Li Hung how he felt, Li Hung could only briefly describe the horror of that moment. It was as if he was in a sea of blood, and then he would faint immediately. Even if he woke up, Li Hung would involuntarily tremble with fear. The fear at the moment before he fainted made him almost have an instinctive fear. It seemed that as long as others mentioned it, he would tremble involuntarily. A young sect master with a great future suddenly became like this. Several elders who knew about it hated that they could not replace Li Hung to bear such pain. No one could figure out the reason, and it could only be attributed to the carelessness of his cultivation that led to a heart demon. After all, only two people have cultivated this cultivation method before and after. The first master ancestor who created this cultivation method and successfully cultivated it may also have unexpected places that led to deviations in the cultivation of the younger generation. This was the only possible explanation. It was simply impossible for them to believe that a spiritual awareness mark left by a person a few years ago could become a tool to deal with them. Therefore, Li Hung must have encountered an inner demon during the process of cultivation. Otherwise, why would he feel fear? However, even if the sect master was worried about Li Hung, he had to just look at him, and after telling him to be careful, he rushed to deal with the matters of the secret plane. There was no other way. The matter in the secret plane was too big. The Taishaman alone had 2 masters of the Deshang stage dead, and 3 were disabled. No one thought that the great danger warned by the secret key turned out to be so dangerous. He thought that the 2 masters of the Deshang stage were already in their hands, but there was still such a big mistake, and the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island took advantage of it. At the thought of this, the Taishaman's hatred for Yang Chun increased by another level. Others didn't know, but the sect master and a group of high-level officials were very clear. After Yang Chun interpreted the secret key, he visited the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect respectively. Although they didn't know what he said, the almost identical performance of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect seemed to have explained many problems. With the oath of the Heart Demon, the Taishaman high-level officials believed that Yang Chun would not disclose the information about the secret key. Moreover, this information was triggered by the formation in Taishaman. Yang Chun did not know and could not know at all. But in any case, they lost so much, but the 2 major sects took advantage of it. This account still had to be calculated after all. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect had to take a long view, but Yang Chun must be removed. Otherwise, if he was allowed to develop, a young 4th-grade alchemist master was definitely a nightmare for the hostile sect. A group of professional killers has been sent to deal with Yang Chun. The rest of the sect masters did not want to care too much about it. For the time being, they had to worry about the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect. After they got the secret plane resources, what kind of threat would they pose to the Taishaman? It must be said that the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect were still very on the road when dealing with certain things. Although at the scene of the secret plane, it was very tough to refute the requirements of the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect, but after moving things back to the sect, they immediately sent people to contact the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect. The things obtained in the secret plane, after careful selection, the 2 major sects each took out 5% of them and sent them to the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect. After all, the other party also lost a master of the Deshang stage. Nothing was really too unreasonable. At the level of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, it was not some small resources that could make them completely put down their morality. After this half of the resources were sent, the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect were also unexpected surprises. For the 2 major sects, they were originally connected, and now they were naturally more closely related. The loss of the 2 masters of the Deshang stage was not made by the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect. They could only blame the Taishaman for the formation left in the secret plane that was leaked. With this batch of compensatory resources, the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect had nothing to say. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Chinquin sect each got more than 2/5 of the resources, and half of it was only 1/20 of the things. Relative to what they got, it was already a small head. They generously took it out and appeased the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect, so there was not much loss. Not only that, but they also got more friendship from the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect. At least in some things, there were more joint support from the 2 major sects. The Taishaman had always been overbearing, and they were the leaders. The 4 major sects had vaguely formed a circle of confrontation. On the contrary, the Taishaman also got something, but only 1/5 of it, and they also suffered heavy casualties. If they also learned from the 2 major sects and took out half of the things, the Taishaman themselves would not be left with much. At this point, it was impossible for them to share the things that their masters had exchanged with others. Even if they have seen the hidden purpose of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect sharing the gains, there was no way to crack it. If they took these resources to win over the 5 Elements sect and the Chinquin sect, they didn't have to wait for the enemy to deal with the Taishaman. Those Deshang stage elders who came back alive after the fight would never allow this kind of thing to happen. Maybe the sect master would soon be deposed by the great elders in the Greatest Heaven sect. The sect master and the elders could only watch things develop in a direction that was not conducive to the Taishaman. There was no way. Chapter 757. In order to win over the 5 Elements sect and Chinquin sect, they had to come up with practical benefits. But after taking it out, not only would the sect be chaotic, but if they took less, not only would it not play the role of winning them over, but it would also be looked down upon. After weighing it in this way, they could only watch the four major sects form a small circle. Originally, they were all a little dissatisfied with the Taishaman, and now they had a few more allies to advance and retreat with. Yang Chun did not expect the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect to have such a big hand. Half of the income sounded not much, but it required the lives of several Deshang stage masters to seize things. How could it be so simple? Don't look at the attitude of the Five Elements sect and Chinquan sect after they got their hands on them. They were almost comparable to the Taishaman sect. This was also good. The greater the strength of the allies, the greater the chance to deal with the enemy. Now it seemed that the Taishaman had become the target of public criticism. Now they had to expand wildly, otherwise they would be united by the four major sects and be squeezed out of the position of the leader of the Dao sections. The more hasty the expansion of strength, the more there would be a situation of good and bad, and naturally there would be some uncontrollable situations, which was what Yang Chun and many people wanted to see. After tossing Li Heng more than a dozen times in a row, Yang Chun finally arrived within the scope of Meiqing Mountain. However, he did not go back to the mountain directly, but found a secluded place, pulled out one of the captives, and threw him on the ground. Closing the five senses, there was no feeling, but there was still consciousness. This was an extremely cruel punishment. No one could support it for too long. The last few guys in the foundation stage had already collapsed in just a few days, and they said whatever they asked. The cultivator's mind was firm, and now this group of assassins was at least in the peak Jidan stage. Compared to the previous group of people, Yang Chun certainly had to spend more time. The guy who was thrown out was a man at the peak Jidan stage. Because his five senses were closed, he was thrown to the ground without any reaction. It was not until Yang Chun removed the restriction that he discovered his situation. After all, he was an expert at the peak of the Jidan realm. To be able to cultivate to this point, it was unknown how many times he had been in seclusion alone for how many years. Although there had been some fatigue, he still did not lose his will. Since I've received benefits from others, I'll be loyal to them. If you want to kill me, do as you please. It seemed that the other party was also a very straightforward killer. In the face of such a situation, he did not panic at all. He just coldly said one sentence, then closed his eyes and did not say anything else. Seeing this situation, Yang Chun did not say anything more. He directly sealed the killer again and threw him back into the dome hall. It could be seen that these were professional assassins who had gone through strict training. Their willpower was incomparably firm. A mere dozen or so days was not enough to make them mentally collapse. From the looks of it, even if it took a little longer, it would not have much of an effect. Some people were born with the ability to endure loneliness. Yang Chun even knew of some extreme people who could hide in an extremely small area for decades without eating or moving. It didn't seem to be easy to get information from these assassins. Yang Chun simply put down his hope. Since the guy said that he had received benefits from others and was loyal to them, maybe he was really a killer who took the bounty. Anyway, the real murderers behind the scenes were nothing more than Taishaman. Yang Chun did not need to have any real evidence now. Moreover, even if there was real evidence, so what? It was impossible for Chunyang Palace to take this evidence to find the Taishaman to reason, and Yang Chun would not expect to be able to reason with the Taishaman. There was no other possibility between the two sides except to fight to the death. It was just that they had not put it on the table yet. Returning to Chunyang Palace, Yang Chun, of course, went to visit his master first. This matter was unshakable. It had not changed since Yang Chun was apprenticed to his master, unless his master was not in the sect. Every time Yang Chun went out, Gai was a little worried. She was happy to see Yang Chun return safe and sound. She asked Yang Chun about his trip. After hearing the performance of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, it seemed that her face was a little strange. It was just that Yang Chun was immersed in the happiness of seeing his master and did not pay too much attention. After visiting his master, he naturally had to see the head of the palace. The consequences of Yang Chen's trip simply made the high-level officials of Chunyang Palace laugh from ear to ear. Was there anything more delightful than watching one's opponent suffer over and over again? It was originally a secret of the Taishaman, but suddenly it became known to the world. Then they finally had the opportunity to rush to the secret plane, but they suffered losses. Finally, they had to be forced to cooperate with several major sects to develop the secret plane, but they only got less than 1/5 of the benefits. The 5 Deshang stage masters of the Taishaman were abolished. After the elders of Chunyang Palace heard the news, they also took a breath of cold air. This was not counting the total of 13 Deshang stage masters of the Green Jade Immortal Island, Blue Cloud Sect, 5 Elements Sect, and Chinquan Sect. When they decided to give up this secret plane, everyone was still a little distressed. It was just that what Yang Chun said was too shocking. They needed to pay the price of 2 or 3 Deshang stage masters, and the time was tight, so they were forced to hand it over. But now it seems that what Yang Chun said at the time was still conservative. How were these 2 or 3 Deshang stage masters? It was clearly 13. Yang Chen's calculation was indeed a bit conservative. After the Taishaman got the secret plane in his previous life, they were not in a hurry to open it, but carefully prepared for a long time, concentrated their strength, and then opened it a little bit. In the end, they only paid the price of 2 or 3 Deshang stage masters. This was a fact. But this life was completely different because there were strong competitors, and the Taishaman could not prove that this was the Taishaman's thing, so naturally they could only do it by force. Everyone had the same reason, inadequate preparation, and the loss was far beyond Yang Chen's expectations. When a master of the palace saw Yang Chen, he naturally asked Yang Chen's experience with the elders, which was exactly the same as Gao Yu. This time, there was indeed not too much thrilling, and the results that should be known had already been known. They just needed to confirm that Yang Chen was fine, and everyone quickly dispersed. Yang Chen did not go directly back to his master, but went straight to the law enforcement hall. Elder Meng Xian had just seen Yang Chen, and when he saw that Yang Chen actually came to the law enforcement hall, he was really surprised. "What's the matter?" Meng Xian asked, very surprised. This disciple encountered more than a dozen killers on the way. Yang Chen replied with a slight smile, "They are determined and not easy to yield. This disciple thinks that it is just suitable for you and the law enforcement hall to practice, so I sent them over." With that said, he waved his hand, and more than a dozen figures fell on the ground of the law enforcement hall like dumplings. Chapter 758. From these guys' mouths, Yang Chen could not get any news, but it was a bit of fuss to deal with a few assassins. Since these people had been caught, it was better to let the disciples of Chunyang Palace take advantage of it. Among the assassins, there were several Yuanying stage masters, and the rest were peak Jidan stage masters. Let the law enforcement hall practice. He believed that in the history of the law enforcement hall of Chunyang Palace, there were few opportunities to deal with the Yuanying stage masters. Meng Xian took a breath of cold air on the spot. Such a big move was really unbelievable. Yang Chen understated in front of the head of the palace and the elders that he was assassinated, and then he killed one and captured a few. Everyone thought that it was just a master of the Jidan stage. Who could have thought that there were so many Yuanying stage masters among them? Originally, when they heard Yang Chen say that he killed 6 Yuanying stage masters of Taishaman, everyone had an unreal feeling. Now, there were so many Yuanying stage masters in front of them, which was very shocking. With Meng Xian's eyesight, of course, he could see at a glance that these masters were all ruthless people who had been through the test of killing for a long time, otherwise they would not act as assassins. It was just that this time, he didn't know what price the Taishaman had to pay to let this level of master take action. But this also showed that Yang Chen's situation was getting more and more dangerous. "Master, uncle, the things on their bodies, this disciple has already searched." Yang Chen did not seem to be aware of the danger at all, and said with a smile, "As for what can be obtained from their mouths, it depends on the ability of the law enforcement hall. This disciple will not greet you." Meng Xian had been in charge of the law enforcement hall for many years, and naturally had his pride. Yang Chen could catch so many masters. If they couldn't even dig out some news from these people, wouldn't it be a great loss of face? Yang Chen said this, but it was a little provocative, and it made Meng Xian's heroic spirit surge. He smiled at Yang Chun and said loudly, "You go. The rest will be handed over to my law enforcement hall. Try not to hurt their lives. If possible, it is also good to let these guys be the target of core disciple training." Yang Chun finally reminded him, and then left with a smile. It was unknown how these people would be treated in the hands of the law enforcement hall. However, this had nothing to do with Yang Chun. Since he had the intention to kill Yang Chun, he had to be prepared to be killed by Yang Chun. They would be lucky if they didn't die. On the contrary, when Meng Xian heard Yang Chun's words, his heart skipped a beat. He stared at the dozen people on the ground thoughtfully. After a long time, he waved his hand and directly rolled up more than a dozen people, and then went directly to the head of the palace. What Yang Chun said was indeed a good idea. With these sparring partners, the actual combat level of the core disciples would greatly increase, and the strength of the sect would similarly increase. This Yang Chun didn't even spare the captives. It seemed that he already had the attitude of a young palace master. Along the way, Meng Xian had a smile on his face. Having such a disciple was the sect's greatest blessing. Yang Chen's spiritual power was condensed into Dan. At this moment, he was in the balance of yin and yang 5 elements. In the short term, Yang Chun did not think about breaking through. The right thing to do was to stabilize his current cultivation base. During this time, he could also solve the things that Yang Chun had wanted to put into action for a long time. Gao Yu was now constantly nourishing the dragon horn, scouring it with her own spiritual power and spiritual awareness over and over again. Such years of hard work could make Gao Yu and the dragon horn more and more compatible, and increase the possibility of refining the dragon horn. However, as a Jidan stage master, during the time when Yang Chun went out, Gao Yu accepted another female disciple. But it was not any of the senior sisters in Yang Chen's previous memories. Yang Chun was very surprised, but Gao Yu said with some emotion that she would only accept female disciples in the future, and no male disciples would be accepted. The expression when she spoke made Yang Chen's heart palpitate. Of course, he knew why Gao Yu would do this. It was to not make Yang Chun feel uncomfortable. Although Gao Yu knew that Yang Chun would not care about this, she still took the initiative to do so. Yang Chun was very grateful for his master's kindness. There were only Yang Chun and his master at the scene. Yang Chun also couldn't help but hold his master's slender waist and hold Gao Yu in his arms. "You finally plan to take Ling, as a concubine?" Gao Yu did not resist, but leaned on Yang Chen's arms with great enjoyment, and asked with a smile. This time Ling came back. She is very happy. Gong Sun Ling and Gao Yu were now almost like sisters, and nothing was hidden from Gao Yu. During the time when Yang Chun went out, Gong Sun Ling had told Gao Yu everything that happened to them in the demonic sect. Even the most shameful pretending to be Yang Chen's concubine, and even watching Lady Fanghua's heavenly demons' alluring dance were not concealed. Yang Chun said that after coming back, he would ask his master to marry his master and senior sister, which made Gong Sun Ling even happier, and she did not hide it from Gao Yu. Therefore, Gao Yu did not resist Yang Chen's intimate action. The relationship between Gao Yu, Gong Sun Ling, and Yang Chun, whether inside or outside the sect, many people understood it. What Yang Chun didn't know was that the reason why Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan would unite was precisely because of Hua Wanning's advice to the two women. Gao Yu and Gong Sun Ling had joined forces. If Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan still wanted to fight, it would only benefit the two women, and it would not benefit them. On the contrary, they could unite in front of Yang Chun and faintly fight against Gao Yu and Gong Sun Ling. "Master, are you willing to marry me?" Yang Chun used a very strange title and said this proposal. "Enemy." Gao Yu sighed in a low voice, but her face also flashed a crimson. "If I don't want to, how can I let you be so frivolous?" Although he already knew that Gao Yu was unlikely to refuse, he was still a little nervous when he really faced this moment. Listening to Gao Yu's voice, Yang Chun was overjoyed. The sudden happiness made him not know what to say. Under the ecstasy, Yang Chen's arms tightened, and then noticed Gao Yu's slightly painful frown. Yang Chun was shocked. He knew how powerful he was after he cultivated the yellow, turban strongman body refining technique. He had reached the realm of mountain-picking strength, and he had the power of thousands of jin. Once he hurt his master, it would be beyond redemption. Fortunately, Yang Chun subconsciously tightened his arms, although Gao Yu's delicate body was somewhat unbearable. After all, the body still had some elasticity and did not cause any irreparable consequences. You can't let Ling her down. Just after Yang Chun took a long breath, Gao Yu suddenly said, Linger also accompanied you through life and death. She is deeply attached to you. If you want to marry, you have to marry her. Chapter 759. Master, I have wronged you. This time, Yang Chun carefully took Gao Yu into his arms again, put his face on the back of Gao Yu's head, smelled the fragrance of Gao Yu's hair, and said apologetically. Gao Yu leaned her head back and completely leaned into Yang Chen's arms, as if she enjoyed this intimate hug. After a while, she whispered, We don't need to say this between us. Although she and Yang Chun had only been a master and apprentice for 100 years, Gao Yu seemed to have lived with Yang Chun for a lifetime. Not to mention the fact that Yang Chun desperately rescued her in the 100,000 mountains. Just those who spoke rudely to Gao Yu were cleaned up by Yang Chun one by one, which made Gao Yu very happy. Between the two, when they first cultivated the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra, the feeling of telepathy has made them unreservedly trust each other. Yang Chun has long had the heart of love, but Gao Yu has already asked herself to be Yang Chen's people, nothing else. In this way, maintaining this posture, the two naturally entered the cultivation of the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra. This time, perhaps because after Yang Chen's proposal, the relationship between the two was completely clear and there was no need to worry about anything as before, the effect of the cultivation was surprisingly effective. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness seemed to have condensed again. At this point, if he wanted to condense his spiritual awareness in the middle Deshang stage, it was not something that could be solved in 1 or 2 times of cultivation. But for Gao Yu, this time's cultivation was tantamount to a reborn change. Because of the strength of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness cultivation base, it directly led to a large degree of condensation of Gao Yu's spiritual awareness. The spiritual awareness that had already entered the early Yuanying stage after this double cultivation with Yang Chun advanced by leaps and bounds and rushed straight to the peak of the early Yuanying stage. The stronger Gao Yu's spiritual sense was, the more confidence she had in refining her own dragon horn flying sword. Moreover, the strength of the spiritual awareness that had been tempered by Yang Chun was so high that it was simply stunning. Even Gao Yu was wondering if Master Wang Yang's spiritual awareness at the moment was as strong as Yang Chen's. Naturally, Gao Yu would never think that Yang Chen's spiritual awareness at this moment had far surpassed Wang Yang's level. The middle Deshang stage and the early Deshang stage seemed to be only separated by a small realm, but the gap between these two small realms was enough to exceed the early Deshang stage itself. The higher one's cultivation, the greater the gap between each level. Coming out of the state of cultivation, Yang Chun gently turned Gao Yu's body to face him. Looking at Gao Yu, who was also filled with joy, he slowly kissed Gao Yu's trembling red lips. Gao Yu moaned, her eyes closed, lost in the joy of mutual affection, and never wanted to wake up. It wasn't until a long time later that Yang Chun gently let go and looked down at his beloved master, who had never been like this before. You're not going to find Ling? She's probably waiting anxiously. Gao Yu couldn't stand the burning eyes of Yang Chun. She gently punched Yang Chen's chest, then reached out and pushed herself out of Yang Chen's arms. Knowing that his master's face was tender, Yang Chen naturally would not push too hard. Anyway, his master had agreed to marry. There was a long time in the future. In the process of cultivation, there was enough time for the two to slowly taste the sweetness of husband and wife. On the side of senior sister Gong Sunling, there was naturally no problem. As early as in the territory of the demon sect, Gong Sunling had already regarded herself as Yang Chen's woman. Otherwise, the two would not be so intimate. Even so, when Gong Sunling really heard Yang Chen's proposal and saw Gao Yu next to Yang Chun, she still showed ecstasy after confirming that she was not dreaming. Regardless of Gao Yu watching with a smile, she threw herself into Yang Chen's arms. Gong Sunling had been waiting for Yang Chen for a long time. Yang Chen easily held Gong Sunling in his arms with one hand. He looked down at Gong Sunling, who was crying with joy, and glanced at Gao Yu, who was smiling on the side. His other free hand pulled and immediately pulled Gao Yu to his side and held her in his arms. Gao Yu was going to struggle, but Yang Chen's arm seemed to become a steel hoop in an instant, which was extremely strong. Gao Yu knew that she couldn't get rid of it. She sighed her heart, smiled slightly, and called out, "Enemy." Then she gave up struggling and also put her body on Yang Chen's chest. Looking from a distance, Yang Chen's body became huge after cultivating the yellow, turbaned strongman body refining technique, like a powerful gorilla, one in each hand, holding two petite beauties in his arms. If the two women struggled a little, it would simply be a real-life version of the Beauty and the Beast. Under the slightly overbearing embrace of Yang Chen, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling also looked at each other and saw the joy in each other's eyes, and also saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. It seemed that after confirming the relationship at this moment, Yang Chen no longer regarded them as masters and sisters, but as their wives, and he also had a trace of a husband style. Looking at the two women in his arms and feeling the elasticity of the two women's delicate bodies, Yang Chen's heart was filled with mixed feelings. In a trance, he saw his past life again. Gong Sunling turned into ashes at the moment of the tribulation, and Gao Yu told him to escape and commit suicide. Everything seemed to happen in front of him. Two talented women died like this. In this life, Yang Chen would never let these tragedies repeat again. If Yang Chen wanted to marry his master and sister, he would have to report to the head of the palace and the ancestor. For the arrival of this day, whether it was the head of the palace or the other elders, it seemed that it had been expected. Everyone smiled and blessed, and no one objected. As for the ancestor Wang Yong, he was the one who supported Yang Chen to accept all of them, and there would be no disagreement. This was a major event in the Chunyang Palace. Even if it was not known to the whole world, at least it should be celebrated in the sect. The arrangement of the elders made Gao Yu and Gong Sunling always ashamed, but Yang Chen was thick-skinned and listened with a smile. However, what are you going to do with the cold plum fairy and the dancing snow fairy? After the bustle, the head of the palace seemed to remember this. Facing Yang Chen, he asked this question. The other elders were also quiet, waiting for Yang Chen's answer. Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were related to the relationship between the Chunyang Palace and the Blue Cloud sect of the Green Jade Immortal Island. It was not a small matter. They didn't know how Yang Chen considered it in this regard. As soon as this question came out, Yang Chen suddenly became silent. To be honest, he really didn't think about how to deal with the relationship with the two women. I am a master of Yang Chen. I make the decision, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. I will marry them both. Before Yang Chen could answer, his master Gao Yu over there had already given the answer on behalf of Yang Chen. Chapter 760. Yang Chen's mind was still a little hesitant. On the one hand, he felt that accepting Gong Sunling was already a little unfair to his master. Secondly, Yang Chen has never figured out whether he should accept Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. This was not a wish that came from his heart. In other words, while feeling sorry for his master, the feelings of Yang Chen and Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue have not yet reached the point where they could be together. This was not surprising. They did not spend a long time together. Although every meeting was very pleasant, it was not to the point where they would not marry anyone else. But now Gao Yu once again made the decision for Yang Chen as a master, and Yang Chen could not object. Gao Yu's identity was now very special. Not only was she Yang Chen's master, but she was also Yang Chen's wife. Whether it was Gong Sunling, Shi Shanshan, or Sun Qingxue, if they wanted to enter the Yang family, even if they had a high cultivation base, they had to bow their heads and call Gao Yu elder sister. In the end, Yang Chen still did not object to Gao Yu. He sighed and nodded. Since he had accepted them, he might as well accept them all. Yang Chen also did not want the cooperation between Chunyang Palace and Blue Cloud sect of the Green Jade Immortal Island to be destroyed. The problem now was that there was no problem with Chunyang Palace, there was no problem with Gao Yu Gong Sunling, and there was no problem with Yang Chen. He just didn't know what Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue meant. Were they willing to work with Gao Yu and Gong Sunling for Yang Chen? In Yang Chen's view, Sun Qingxue may not have much objection, but it was hard to say for Shi Shanshan. With Shi Shanshan's arrogant temper, maybe she would not consider it at all. All right. When the head of the palace saw that Yang Chen also nodded, he was happy, and the other elders were also happy. This was everyone's ideal situation, and everyone was happy to see it happen. The sect will immediately choose a day to propose to the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect. Palace Master Zhang Jiao was happy and immediately made a decision. It is rare for Chunyang Palace to have such a happy event. The sect must organize at once. The palace master made a decision, and everyone naturally would not oppose it. The head of the palace wanted to do a big thing, but he used this as a cover to bring the relationship between the Chunyang Palace and the Blue Cloud sect of the Green Jade Immortal Island closer by 10%, which had a deep meaning. Yang Chen didn't need to intervene in the following matters. The sect would take care of it. The palace master even decided to personally go to the two major sects to propose marriage. As for the betrothal gifts, Chunyang Palace didn't have anything else, but the second-grade inner sensing pill and the second-grade questioning inner heart pill were definitely a big deal for other sects. Of course, the second-grade inner sensing pill could be prepared for a few more, but the second-grade questioning inner heart pill could only be prepared for 2, no more. But even so, it was a rare gift, and it would definitely make the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect satisfied. The sect arranged the marriage of Yang Chen. Naturally, it was necessary to take the birthdays of Yang Chen and the women to calculate the auspicious days. This period of time would not be very short. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yang Chen could go out. After determining the relationship with Yang Chen, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling naturally moved with Yang Chen. Originally, Gao Yu also wanted to travel with Yang Chen, but she had to temper the dragon horn and could not go out for the time being. Only Gong Sunling could accompany Yang Chen. This trip, Yang Chen was planning to collect a medicine-nourishing gourd left by an immortal on the Immortal Executioner stage. Yang Chen has been coveting this gourd for a long time, but he always felt that his strength was not enough and he couldn't collect it. Now the full attribute spirit power was condensed, and with a large number of first with spiritual solution and 7th metal true essence spiritual solution as a foundation, Yang Chen already had the qualifications to collect this medicine-nourishing gourd. The medicine-nourishing gourd left by the immortal originally belonged to a top-grade alchemy master. After carefully refining the medicine-nourishing gourd, the medicinal pills placed in it would be slowly warmed by the gourd, purified and enhanced. Heaven-defying medicinal pills, such as the questioning inner heart pill and the heaven-seizing pill, were placed in the gourd, and there was no need to use talismans to block the medicinal properties. It was definitely a good thing that an alchemy master dreamed of. Gong Sunling's mountain river geographical map was that the more places it passed through, the more complete the geography drawn and the greater the power of the formation. As long as there was a chance, Gong Sunling would go out. Now that she could travel with Yang Chen again, Gong Sunling was naturally eager. The location of the medicine-nourishing gourd was within the territory of the Dao sections. As long as he was a little careful, there would not be too much crisis. However, Yang Chen's identity was now special, and the Taishamen were trying to take Yang Chen's life. In any case, it was better to be careful. Before going out, Yang Chen went to the Qinqiu Pavilion Market again. Yang Chen also had to learn about the previous bounty on Yang Lan for Shang Wanfeng. As Yang Chen expected, with Yang Chen once again increasing the bounty of spirit stones, Yang Lan, a guy in the foundation stage, even among the Taishamen, was in a panic all day long for fear that there would be people around him assassinating him at any time. He was cautious every day, not to mention leaving the Taishamen. Even the outer mountain gate of the Taishamen did not dare to pass easily. This was exactly the effect that Yang Chen needed. Although Yang Chen was not as frightened as him in his previous life, he had been fleeing under the shadow of being chased for hundreds of years. Relatively speaking, Yang Lan's suffering was only a few days, and it was not enough to pay off the interest of Yang Chen's previous life. The reward has been raised to 10 pounds of high-grade spirit stones. Yangchen once again raised the reward. For a guy in the foundation stage, this was already a sky-high price, and even a deal with a cultivator in the early Jidan stage, it was more than enough. Don't look at such a small amount of spirit stones. There were many people who were willing to exchange the heads of other cultivators. Yang Chun wanted to make Yang Lan live in fear through the promotion of the reward after a period of time. Yang Lan was not like Yang Chun. In his previous life, he relied on the big tree of the Taishaman to make a living, but his achievements were not high. At least Yang Chun had never seen the shadow of this guy in the spiritual world and immortal world for many years. He believed that when the reward given by Yang Chun was high enough, Yang Lan would be betrayed by the people in his sect, and they would take his head to Yang Chun to receive the reward. This was the life trajectory that Yang Chun planned for Yang Lan, and there would be no bias. Even Yang Chun hoped that Yang Lan would be more tenacious and more cunning, so that he could hold on to the last time. As Yang Chun said, with a questioning inner heart pill, there would definitely be an elder-level figure in the Taishaman who would personally solve Yang Lan's problem. Coming to Shangwan Feng, Yang Chen also had another purpose. That was to let Shangwan Feng inquire about whether there was a high bounty outside. According to reason, the general reward would never attract more than a dozen assassins. They were masters of the Yuanying stage, and the worst was also the peak Jidan stage. How could they run for some spirit stones? Shangwan Feng now had cooperation with the Wine Immortal House, and it was naturally easy to inquire about this news. Shangwan Feng patted his chest and promised that the next time Yang Chen came, he would definitely give him a satisfactory answer. Chapter 761. Yang Chen and Gong Sunling set off together. Even if they rushed to the location of the medicine-nourishing gourd, it would take a few months. Both of them were in Yang Chen's shuttle. This time, Yang Chen did not intend to make it public, but he was very low-key. Anyway, Yang Chen and Gong Sunling were together, and the two loved each other. Along the way, it didn't matter how long it was, the two had a happy time. Not to mention the two peoples lingering along the way. In recent days, there was another thing that caused the entire Dao sects to be in an uproar. The matter was still in the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect, but it was not Yang Chun who proposed to Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, but in a short period of less than 2 months, the two major sects had a new master of the Deshang stage promoted. It was not surprising that a master of the peak Yuanying stage had been promoted to the Deshang stage in a big sect. However, it was not so easy to be promoted to the Deshang stage. In the past, Hua Wanting, Elder Hua, almost spent a whole 100 years competing with the Blood Demon Vine, and with a little help from Yang Chun, he was promoted. After that, for almost 100 years, there was no new master of the Deshang stage. The old tree demon was his own accumulation, and he was still a monster race, the real Dao sect cultivator. After 100 years, there was only one Wang Yong of Chunyang Palace. However, Wang Yong had only been promoted for a few years, and immediately there were 2 peak Yuanying stage cultivators who were promoted, and both of them were sects related to Chunyang Palace, which was surprising. In fact, everyone understood that this was definitely the credit of the questioning inner heart pill. This kind of good thing that could allow the masters of the Deshang stage to take the opportunity to break through the realm. If used on the masters of the Yuanying stage, it could also make people reborn in their state of mind. Wang Yong's promotion was related to the questioning inner heart pill, and the 2 masters of the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect were also related to the questioning inner heart pill. After the confirmation of the 2 major sects, the value of the questioning inner heart pill soared to another level. It was not known how many masters who were trapped in the peak Yuanying stage waiting for their lifespan to run out were desperate to get a questioning inner heart pill. Everyone knew that the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill was in the hands of the pure Yang Palace's Yang Chun. All the questioning inner heart pills that appeared now came from Yang Chen's handwriting, and there was no exception. All eyes seemed to be focused on Chunyang Palace. If it was in the past, a small second-rate sect would definitely have a master come to the door and coerce Chunyang Palace to hand over the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill or force Yang Chun to help refine the questioning inner heart pill. However, Today was different from the past. The current Chunyang Palace was not the same as it was in the past. It had established a cooperative alliance with the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. Even if it was the Taishamen, without any real evidence, they would not dare to easily deal with Chunyang Palace. Moreover, some big sects knew that even if the Green Jade Immortal Island and Chunyang Palace wanted to refine the questioning inner heart pill, they had to pay enough remuneration to Chunyang Palace and Yangchun, and they also had to prepare their own medicinal materials. From this point of view, whether it was the Five Elements sect or the Chinquin sect, they all wanted to have a little relationship with Chunyang Palace. Otherwise, they would not have accepted some secret plain compensation from the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect, and they would not have been more closely related to the two major sects. It was clear that they wanted to build a line with Chunyang Palace through the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. After all, there had been no intersection before. Even if it was the Five Elements sect and the Chinquin sect, they could not overlook Chunyang Palace with the eyes of the past. If they asked for help, they must have the attitude of asking for help. In this regard, the Five Elements sect and the Chinquin sect did well enough, and they had enough patience. Cultivation knew no time. A mere few years, or even a few decades to establish a good cooperative relationship was definitely not a big deal for the people of these big sections. Even if it took a longer time, it was definitely worth it. Not to look at the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect, they had only cooperated for a few decades, hadn't they? In the same way, didn't the Taishamen want to get the questioning inner heart pill? However, the previous arrangements against Yangchun against Chunyang Palace have completely pushed Chunyang Palace and Yangchun to the opposite side. Even if the Taishamen wanted to build a relationship with Chunyang Palace, it was impossible with the hatred of Yangchun's previous life. In the Battle of the Secret Plane, the Taishamen lost 5 Dashang stage masters, and the two major sects lost 3 each. Originally, there was some balance. After all, the two major sects' foundation was not as deep as the Taishamen's, and the number of such top masters was still insufficient. Originally, there was still a little advantage, but now, the miserable Taishamen could only watch the two major sects cultivate 2 brand-new Dashang stage masters in less than a few years. And with the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sects questioning inner heart pill in hand, this situation would only appear more and more. For the Taishamen, this was definitely a fatal thing. If the current situation was allowed to develop, the top power of the Taishamen would be surpassed by the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. At this moment, the Taishamen's reserve force was hit hard. The Taishamen's Dao sect leader status was already in jeopardy. All of this seemed to be related to Yangchun. The high-level Taishamen wanted to break their heads, but they couldn't figure out why a kid in the early Jiadan stage who cultivated under their eyelids could bring them such great trouble. From the questioning inner heart pill, the high-level Taishamen also seemed to have speculated about the cause of the death of the Yuanying stage masters and those killers who died in the pursuit of Yangchun. With this kind of good thing, it was not impossible to ask 1 or 2 Dashang stage masters to secretly protect him. With this speculation, the high-level Taishamen suddenly had no confidence in killing Yangchun. Such an enchanting guy. If there were a few Dashang stage masters secretly protecting him, what kind of lineup would it take to kill Yangchun? The problem was that now for the development of the sect, Yangchun must be killed. Otherwise, once Yangchun refined more and more questioning inner heart pills, the threat to the Taishamen would become greater and greater. Now, the Five Elements sect and the Chinquin sect were faintly leaning towards the side of Chunyang Palace. Once the other 4 major sects got Yangchun's questioning inner heart pills, but the Taishamen did not, it would be a deadly threat to the Taishamen. In any case, Yangchun must be killed. Not only that, but they must also rob or destroy the pill recipes that Yangchun may have left. They were afraid that it was not enough to deal with Yangchun alone. They had to count the entire Chunyang Palace. There was no moment when the Taishamen would feel that the small second-rate sect of Chunyang Palace would be so threatening that they would want to get rid of it quickly. All of this was just because of the emergence of the enchanting character Yangchun. If that stupid guy had not thrown Yangchun out of the gate of the Taishamen, how good would that be? Chapter 762. Yang Chun and Gong Sunling, leisurely all the way as if they were sightseeing. They slowly swam toward the location of the medicine-nourishing gourd, regardless of the sky that had been turned upside down because of the questioning inner heart pill. Gong Sunling took out her best craftsmanship. Just like a wife, she carefully prepared food for Yang Chun every meal according to the time. Anyway, Gong Sunling's main energy now was to temper her life source magic weapon and consolidate her cultivation base. The mountain river geographical map had its special effect. As long as she traveled to enough places, she could improve it. There was no need for Gong Sunling to consume too much energy to immerse herself in cultivation. In this way, it was naturally advantageous to Yang Chun. Every meal, Yang Chun could enjoy the food that Gong Sunling carefully designed and made for Yang Chun. Every meal made Yang Chun smile and want more. Every time at this time, Gong Sunling would be by Yang Chun's side, dutifully adding food and rice for him. And then watching Yang Chun eat the food she prepared with joy, her face was full of a satisfied smile. Yang Chun knew that the best way to treat his beloved wife, who cooked for him with her heart, was to gobble up the food she made. This was the greatest respect for her heart. And Yang Chun did the same. Gong Sunling's appetite was small, and cultivators rarely ate some mortal food. Almost 99% of the delicious food fell into Yang Chun's mouth. In addition to this, the two talked about some mountains and rivers, geography, and travel. Gong Sunling was essentially still an array cultivator. For array cultivators, no matter how powerful the array was, it was nothing more than the whole world. No matter how powerful the master was, he had to survive in the world and could not jump out of it. The reason why the mountain river geographical map was so powerful was precisely because of this. Therefore, what Yang Chun and Gong Sunling said was nothing more than to let Gong Sunling have a better understanding of the natural world, which was also of great benefit to her cultivation. Of course, no matter how much Yang Chun said, it was not as good as Gong Sunling's own experience and travel around the world. However, that was definitely a matter in the future. Naturally, when the two were together, there was no lack of spiritual awareness double cultivation. The great improvement of Yang Chun's spiritual awareness had great benefits for Gong Sunling's improvement. In fact, before returning to Chunyang Palace, Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness had already been raised to the peak of the early Yuanying stage. And every time they cultivated, the spiritual awareness of the two would be more condensed. Although Yang Chun had a more powerful physical double cultivation method in his mind, Yang Chun did not intend to cultivate when everyone was in the early Jidan stage. Not to mention that Yang Chun, Gao Yu, and Gong Sunling were all tempering their life source magic weapons. Rashly cultivating double cultivation would damage their life source magic weapons. Just now, their cultivation was too low, and it was not enough to cultivate those double cultivation methods. For the double cultivation below the Yuanying stage, unless there was no other way, Yang Chun would never consider it. This was not only for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, but also for Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue in the future. Yang Chun would rather cultivate the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra with them than to easily cultivate his body and spirit power. Originally, it was thought that the upsurge of the new masters of the Dashang stage would slowly weaken with the passage of time. However, when a master visited the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, Yang Chun was once again pushed to the forefront of the storm. The one who visited the two major sects was the Black Tiger predecessor of the beast-taming sect. In fact, strictly speaking, the first to accept the monster race was not Chunyang Palace, but the beast-taming sect. However, the cultivation method of the beast-taming sect was relatively special and could not be completely separated from the relationship with the monsters. Every monster pet was a monster beast, and a powerful monster pet was a more powerful monster beast. In essence, these monsters were the monster race, but they were the monster race controlled by people. Of course, the Dao sects could accept this kind of thing, there was no doubt. The identity of the Black Tiger predecessor was also a monster pet left by an ascended predecessor to take care of the sect. The powerful master of the beast-taming sect would never have only one monster pet, and it was not difficult to leave one behind. With the lifespan of the black tiger monster race, coupled with the cultivation base of the Dashang stage, no matter which sect, he could afford the title of a senior. What's more, now the beast-taming sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island Blue Cloud sect Chunyang Palace have been cooperating to manage the 100,000 mountains. Of course, the two major sects received him with the courtesy of a senior. This year, it was the time for the Black Tiger predecessor to leave the 100,000 mountains. Because there were few masters of the Dashang stage in the beast-taming sect and Chunyang Palace, the two sects took turns to send masters. When the Black Tiger predecessor came back, it was his turn to visit Chunyang Palace. Of course, it was the clone of the old tree demon Gui Shanyu who went to Chunyang Palace. The Black Tiger predecessor visited the two major sects purely out of courtesy. The beast-taming sect has also received a lot of resources and rapid development in recent years, and it definitely had the most direct relationship with the four sects. As a small sect, the beast-taming sect certainly knew where these benefits came from. So it was natural for the Black Tiger predecessor to visit the two major sects as the most respected existence of the beast-taming sect. Don't look at the Black Tiger predecessor sitting in the 100,000 mountains, but what happened in the past 10 years has not been hidden from his eyes and ears. There were also some well-informed people in the 100,000 mountains, especially after the four major sects took control of the 100,000 mountains. Many people in the Dao sects went to the 100,000 mountains to try their luck, and the Black Tiger predecessor knew no less than anyone. It was originally just a courtesy visit, but when he was in the Blue Cloud sect, he still talked about this secret plane battle by accident. For this level of secret plane, the Black Tiger predecessor has never had extravagant hopes, but when he heard that the Blue Cloud sect had two masters of the Dashang stage who were seriously injured, it was likely that they would not be able to recover for hundreds of years, or even longer. He still showed a little surprise, and, at the same time, there was also a little hesitation. Sect Master Lu was aware of this for the time being, and he waited a little in his heart, and sincerely asked the Black Tiger predecessor for advice. Anyway, Sect Master Lu was also a junior in the face of the Black Tiger predecessor. It was natural for the younger generation to ask the senior for advice. When the old man was crossing the fire tribulation, he was seriously injured. Although he was lucky enough to be promoted to the Dashang stage, the hidden injuries have been in the body. The Black Tiger predecessor hesitated for a moment, but still set out, "I have been suppressing the hidden injuries for hundreds of years, and a few decades ago, I was finally unable to suppress it." This was the secret of the beast-taming sect, which was related to the life and death of the beast-taming sect. The beast-taming sect has never announced it to the public. Now that the Black Tiger predecessor has already recovered, it was no big deal to say it to Sect Master Lu. This was also the first time that Sect Master Lu heard this secret of the beast-taming sect, and he was very focused. When the hidden injuries were about to break out in full force soon, this old man met Yang Chun. The Black Tiger predecessor finally said the most important part. After he saw the injury of this old man, he refined two medicinal pills for this old man. One is called the Black Tiger Calming Pill. The other is called the Black Tiger Yuan Replenishing Pill. After taking the two medicinal pills, this old man's hundreds of years of hidden injuries were healed. Chapter 763. At this point, it was already clear that it couldn't be clearer. Before everyone was still talking about the success or failure of the secret plane. The Blue Cloud sect sent 6 masters of the Dashang stage. 1 died, and 2 were seriously injured. Not to mention the dead one, but the 2 seriously injured ones. The situation was similar to that of the Black Tiger predecessor. What's more, the injury of the Black Tiger predecessor was a hidden injury left by the fire tribulation. Strictly speaking, it was still more serious than the injury of their formation. Even the injury of the Black Tiger predecessor could be healed. Didn't that mean that these 2 seriously injured Dashang stage masters could also do the same? The first 3 masters of the Dashang stage who were sent were the 3 guys in the Blue Cloud sect who didn't listen to Sect Master Lu. However, after this secret plane lesson, coupled with the questioning inner heart pill that created a new master of the Dashang stage. The remaining two seriously injured guys must have understood the general trend. In this case, if the two seriously injured masters of the Dashang stage could be healed, wouldn't it mean that the strength of the Blue Cloud sect would immediately return to before the secret plane competition, and they would be more united, and there would be more resources in the secret plane? Sect Master Liu has been in charge of the Blue Cloud sect for many years, and, of course, the key to this could be understood. After listening to the description of the Black Tiger predecessor, he was overjoyed. If Yang Chun could heal the injury of the Black Tiger predecessor, it was very likely that he could also heal the injuries of the two masters of the Dashang stage in the sect. When they were cured of their injuries and obedient, the benefits were self-evident. Since this matter has already been said in the Blue Cloud sect, the Black Tiger predecessor in the Green Jade Immortal Island also did not favor one over the other, and said the same thing. The Lord of Tantai and Sect Master Liu's ideas were almost the same, otherwise they would not have such a tacit understanding in the previous secret plane competition, each sending a few disobedient guys. Although the Green Jade Immortal Island had two Dashang stage masters dead, and only one was seriously injured, he was also a master of the Dashang stage. If he could be healed, even if he didn't listen, it was also the power of the sect. Everything seemed to have returned to Yang Chun. Yang Chun, who was planning to collect the medicine-nourishing gourd outside, did not know that he had unconsciously become the focus of everyone's attention. These secrets were, of course, limited to the upper echelons of the two major sects. Senior Black Tiger would not meet just anyone and say that his serious injuries were healed by Yang Chun. Therefore, not many people knew about this. However, there was another thing about Yang Chun that everyone knew, and it quickly caused a sensation. The Palace Master of the Chunyang Palace personally went to the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect to propose to the Cold Plum Fairy and Dancing Snow Fairy respectively for their own sect's disciple Yang Chun. This matter did not have much concealment and quickly spread throughout the Dao sections. Cold Plum Fairy and Dancing Snow Fairy. As long as one was a cultivator, one would know the names of these two. She came from a prestigious clan, had exceptional talent, and was also incomparably beautiful. Any one of them would be the Dao companion of countless cultivators. It was not known how many people had the idea of the two fairies. But now, a disciple of the Chunyang Palace dared to risk the world's condemnation and tried to marry the two fairies as Dao companions. How could it not make countless people who had the idea of the two women angry? Although Shi Shanshan had already said that she was Yang Chen's person, didn't this never become a fact? Many people were looking forward to the sudden death of Yang Chun, and they could take the opportunity to enter. Although Dancing Snow Fairy did not say so clearly, many people in the Blue Cloud sect also knew that the relationship between Sun Qingxue and Yang Chun seemed to have reached the point of being a monarch. People who knew about this kind of thing understood, but they also knew one thing, that was, it was not difficult for Yang Chun to become a Dao companion with any one of them. However, if he was greedy and wanted to marry the two beauties, imitating a Huang and Nuying, it was simply impossible. Not to mention that the two women would not agree to this kind of thing, but the two major sects of the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect could not pass. Needless to say that the head of the Chunyang Palace personally came forward. Even if the head of the Taishaman sect came forward, the two major sects might not give face to the head of the Taishaman sect. What's more, this was not the most extreme. The most devastating thing was that Yang Chun, this kid, actually wanted to marry his master and senior sister at the same time. At this point, the Chunyang Palace did not hide it at all. According to this, Cold Plum Fairy and Dancing Snow Fairy were not necessarily Yang Chen's wives. After hearing this news, the first reaction in everyone's mind was to slap their faces. This was definitely Chunyang Palace slapping the faces of the two major sects. There was no other explanation. Was there anything more ridiculous than hearing this? Compared with this kind of shock, Yang Chun wanted to marry his master, which was almost a small sesame seed. Among the cultivators, there were many master and apprentice double cultivation, so it was not worth making a fuss. What really shocked everyone was that the move of the Chunyang Palace was definitely treating the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sect as easy targets to bully, soft persimmons that could be taken. If this could be tolerated, what couldn't be tolerated? There was no formal attitude on the side of the two major sects, but the cultivators in the world were already in an uproar. What did the Chunyang Palace want to do? Even if they wanted to die, it was not like this. Did they really think that Yang Chun, a small alchemy master, could be so arrogant? Yes, in the world of cultivators, alchemy masters were indeed distinguished, and ordinary people were not willing to provoke them easily. However, this did not include the big sect like the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect, which big sect did not have a few senior alchemy masters. Did they really think that without a small Yang Chun, no one could refine medicinal pills? Among them, the happiest was the Taishaman. The move of the Chunyang Palace was absolutely self-destructive. The alliance established with the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect was ruined because of the stupid move of the Chunyang Palace. As long as there was no alliance with the two major sects, if the Taishaman wanted to destroy the Chunyang Palace, it was just a matter of minutes. Everyone was waiting for the reply from the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sect. Everyone was waiting to see the joke of Chunyang Palace and Yangchun. Countless gloating guys were even thinking about how they could get the greatest benefits from the Chunyang Palace once Chunyang Palace was abandoned by the two major sects. If they could grab the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill, it simply meant the brightest future. Yang Chun, who was in the teeth of the storm, was not aware of being noticed at all. He was traveling with Gong Sunling along the way, slowly approaching the location of the medicine nourishing gourd. There were still 10 days of journey ahead, and it was the destination. At that time, the medicine nourishing gourd that Yang Chun dreamed of would be in Yang Chen's pocket. Chapter 764. Yang Chen's destination was in the mountains near the west. Although it was still the territory of the Dao sects, because the spiritual veins here were relatively rare, few cultivators would come here, except for some rogue cultivators and occasional fellows. However, few people came did not mean that no one came. At least Yang Chun and Gong Sunling had now met a few, and it seemed that they were very rude to Yang Chun and Gong Sunling. Fellow Taoists, this is the place where the master of the family seclusion practice, please leave. For masters of the peak Jidan realm stood in a row and blocked the way of Yang Chun and Gong Sunling. The four looked at Yang Chun and Gong Sunling, and their eyes were not good. Approaching the destination, Yang Chun and Gong Sunling gave up the shuttle and changed to flying on the sword, but the speed was still not fast, just to find the most accurate place. Unexpectedly, before they reached the location that the Immortals said, they were suddenly stopped by four people. Seclusion. Yang Chun and Gong Sunling were both stunned. There was a lack of spiritual veins here. Even if it was daily cultivation, there was not enough spiritual power, unless a large number of spirit stones were used to supplement it. It was too much to describe it as a place where birds did not lay eggs. There were actually people who secluded themselves here. Fortunately, this was not the destination of Yang Chun. If others wanted to seclude themselves, Yang Chun could not control them. Listening to the words of the four people, Yang Chun said indifferently, "If that is the case, then let's take a detour." When Yang Chun spoke, Gong Sunling stood quietly behind Yang Chun and did not speak. Since Yang Chun had come forward, she only had to wait for Yang Chun to deal with it, and she did not have to worry about anything else. This kind of attitude was a complete mess. It was said that the four people had no reason to make things difficult for Yang Chun and Gong Sunling. However, things were unpredictable. Just as Yang Chun and Gong Sunling were about to leave in another direction, the leader of the four suddenly rushed in front of them and blocked their way. "My master is in seclusion here, and everything within a 500-kilometer radius is a forbidden area. Fellow Taoists, please return to where you came from, so as to avoid harming our friendship." The Jidan realm master who appeared in front of Yang Chun and Gong Sunling had a cold face. While blocking the way, he threatened coldly. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, Yang Chun's destination was included. Yang Chun looked in that direction and could not help but sigh. He did not have the intention to fight with them, but there would always be people who would take the initiative to come to him. He could not help it. I don't know how long you will be in seclusion. I will come back when the time is right. Before making a move, Yang Chun still lowered his stance and tried to solve it in other ways. He was here to retrieve something, not to fight to the death with others. Generally speaking, Yang Chun was still a person who was easy to talk to. As long as it was not something too excessive, Yang Chun would not pursue it. Just like when Guangning of Bright Moon Palace wanted to snatch Yang Chen's brilliant ray sword, Yang Chun did not get angry at first, and even promised to give him a better flying sword. If it was not for Guangning's pressure, Yang Chun would not have killed him. To Yang Chun, cultivation was not about killing. If he really wanted to kill, the number of immortals Yang Chun had killed would be more than the number of immortals that everyone in this world had heard of. At Yang Chen's level, he was not interested in arguing with a bunch of kids in the mortal world. If it was a few Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals, perhaps Yang Chun would still have some thoughts. The higher one stood, the more humble they would appear. Yang Chun seemed to be in such a state now. Naturally, this was also related to his memories from his previous life. Hearing Yang Chen's words, the other party obviously did not expect Yang Chen to answer like this. Even if it was an unreasonable person, when met with Yang Chen's response, there seemed to be no reason for him to get angry. You said not to go in, fine. I won't go in. I will take a detour. You said not to take a detour. I will go back the same way, fine, but I will ask when I can pass. Since it was just a retreat and it was not a long-term occupation here, there must be a time limit, right? One would not hit a smiling person. Which guy who could cultivate to the peak of the Gold Core realm was a fool who would stir up trouble everywhere. This, the patriarch did not say, but the other party was obviously stunned for a moment, and then replied. After answering, he seemed to feel that he could not give a definite answer. After hesitating for a while, he said, after 1,000 years. 1,000 years? Yang Chun frowned directly. With the current cultivation speed of Yang Chun and the women, 1,000 years was enough for them to ascend. What was the point of taking things? Kid, if you want to go, just go, don't talk nonsense. The answer of the guy opposite obviously did not satisfy the others, and suddenly a voice next to him interrupted, if you don't want to go, I don't mind keeping you here forever. It seems that it is not bad to accept a little guy as a slave. Another voice seemed to be more ferocious. In addition, this little girl seems to have a good aptitude. If she is offered to the master as a furnace, we will also have a great reward. With one sentence, Yang Chen's face suddenly became cold. Yang Chun did not mind others using the attitude just now to let him leave, but the words involved Gong Sunling. That was another matter. I don't quite understand what he's saying. Please explain it to me a little. Yang Chen's face changed quickly, and he immediately recovered his calmness and asked the person standing in front of him in a deep voice. The person opposite glared at the last guy who had just spoken rudely and was about to say something, but the guy had already directly opened his mouth and said, You don't understand? The woman behind you. My master wants her. If you offer her with both hands, we can let you be our slave and spare your life. Will it kill you to speak nicely? Yang Chun sighed, took 2 steps back, turned his head and said to Gong Sunling next to him, Linger, they want you. Then you play with them. Gong Sunling nodded silently, took 2 steps forward and replaced Yang Chen's position. Yang Chun let Gong Sunling stand up, of course, for her to gain experience. Although cultivation was not to kill people, combat experience was essential. And the 4 guys at the peak of the Gold Core realm in front of her seemed to be just right for Gong Sunling to practice. Although Gong Sunling was now only at the early stage of the Gold Core realm, in terms of cultivation aptitude, Gong Sunling was not worse than Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. In her previous life, she did not have the resources that the 2 fairies had in their sect, and secondly, it was the wrong direction of cultivation. But in this life, it was completely different. With the strong support and guidance of Yang Chun, Gong Sunling had embarked on a completely different path. Wu Tu True Secret Art, plus the Taishian Yin-Yang Heart Sutra, had raised Gong Sunling's combat effectiveness to the point where she could fight with the peak of the Gold Core realm. Chapter 765. Shua. A powerful sword shadow swept in front of the 4 people, which directly shocked the 4 people. They involuntarily jumped back far away, and each of them took out a magic weapon. Gong Sunling's sword shadow was only to sweep away the space, and did not continue to attack. Instead, in the angry and stunned eyes of the four people, she took out a table and a chair from the Chinquin bag and placed them beside Yang Chun. After Yang Chun sat down, she took out a few plates of braised food from the Chinquin bag, and all kinds of tableware were available. After doing all this, Gong Sunling stepped forward and faced the four masters of the peak Jidan realm, and a dazzling light burst out of her eyes. What was this? The four masters, who were shocked by Gong Sunling's actions, finally understood what Gong Sunling was doing. She was actually preparing food for the boy of the early Jidan realm when the battle was about to begin, so that he could watch their battle while eating small dishes and sipping wine. What did she think of them as? Boundless anger directly rushed into the minds of the four masters of the peak Jidan realm. From birth to the present, even when they met their current master, they had never felt so insulted. Without any protection, they let a junior of the Jidan realm use their battle as a performance with wine. Were Yang Chun and Gong Sunling really naive, or were they fearless? Gong Sunling was not as easy to talk to as Yang Chun. Before Yang Chun dealt with them, as Yang Chun's wife, Gong Sunling certainly wanted her husband to stand up for them. Now that her husband led her fight against the enemy, Gong Sunling had no intention of holding back. The protective maze was instantly activated, and Gong Sunling's figure disappeared silently. After the understanding of the mountain river geographical map, coupled with the content that Yang Chun had talked to her these days, Gong Sunling had a deeper understanding of the way of the maze. What kind of maze could be compared to the real world of the mountain river geographical map? The four masters at the peak of the Jidan realm watched as Gong Sunling's figure suddenly disappeared. No matter how they urged their divine senses, they could not detect Gong Sunling's position. Just at this moment, the four experts at the peak of the Jidan realm with rich combat experience immediately knew what to do. Yang Chun was sitting on the other side, not moving at all. He had even gotten a pot of wine from somewhere, poured a cup, and slowly sipped on it. As long as he attacked Yang Chun, there was no reason for Gong Sunling to keep hiding. The four of them had worked together for who knows how many years and had a very good understanding of each other. Almost at the same time, their magic treasures flew towards Yang Chun. They couldn't be more familiar with besieging way to rescue the besieged. Unfortunately, just as these lightning-fast attacks were launched, before they could even reach Yang Chun's side, the four of them felt a sharp sword aura behind each of them. With their many years of experience, they immediately knew that if they were hit, there would be absolutely no good end. Without hesitation, the four of them took back the magic treasures that attacked Yang Chun and faced the sword aura that attacked each other. Everyone's movements were very fast. Ding, 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 ding. Almost at the same time, there were four sounds. After the sword aura and the magic treasures collided, they suddenly dispersed. But the four masters of the Jidan realm did not get any benefits. Everyone's face showed a very cautious look. A junior in the early Jidan realm actually fought against four of them at the peak of the Jidan realm with tacit understanding and did not fall into a disadvantageous position. What kind of concept was this? The four people couldn't imagine it. When did the little guy in the early Jidan realm become so fierce? They had seen a lot of geniuses who challenged above their level, but that was only by a small level. The most powerful ones were only 2 small levels above their level to challenge the masters. Generally speaking, even if the juniors in the early Jidan realm reached their limit, they could only fight against the guys in the late Jidan realm. They had never seen or even heard of a little guy in the early Jidan realm who could cross 3 small levels and challenge the masters at the peak of the Jidan realm, and it was in the case of 1 against 4. But this was not the end. Countless sword lights, like dense raindrops, appeared wildly from all directions and attacked the 4 people. Even if they had rich combat experience, the 4 people had never seen such a dense sword light attack. This had simply subverted the limit of their understanding. It should be known that there was no sword formation here, and they would not give Gong Sunling time to arrange a sword formation. But this kind of dense attack, except for the sword formation, they could not think of any other possibility. To be able to surround 4 masters at the peak of the Jedon realm, it was impossible for a person to move so fast. There was no other possibility except for the formation. But knowing that it was a formation, the 4 people could not do anything about it now. The array formations that they had seen before were always traceable. The array flags that were used to set up the array formation and the people who were in charge of the array formation. Even if they were trapped in the array formation, there would always be a trace of understanding of the array formation. However, where they were now, they were obviously in the same place. Nothing had changed, and they did not even feel like they were in the formation, but they were facing the attack of the formation. How could this not make the 4 people surprised? What was even more surprising was that whether it was their deliberate attack or the attack of the woman that was blocked, when some of the aftermath flew to the side of Yang Chun, who was drinking and watching the show, it seemed to suddenly fall into nothingness and disappeared without a trace. Gong Sunling's attack did not stop at all, and the strength of the attack was getting stronger and stronger. The 4 guys at the peak of the Jedon realm had become more and more serious. The bodies of several people had already leaned together, but they still could not completely resist the overwhelming attack of Gong Sunling. On the bodies of the 4 masters, there were already a lot of bloodstains. This was because they had to block the fatal attack and ignore some other unimportant places. According to this situation, there was only one thing waiting for them. That was, their spiritual power was exhausted and they were killed on the spot by the opponent. The 4 people racked their brains and couldn't understand how Gong Sunling, a junior in the early Jedon realm, could have such a long spiritual power. The 4 people were already exhausted and even began to take medicinal pills and use spirit stones to recover, which was barely able to block the attack of the vital parts. But Gong Sunling's attack did not weaken at all, but it was getting stronger and stronger. Even a fool would understand that they had kicked a big iron plate this time. Yang Chun had not made a move yet, and Gong Sunling had already forced them into such a mess. The guy who had spoken rudely was already regretting his actions to the extreme. If he had known that this would happen, why bother to say those unreliable words? Yang Chun was already very polite, and they still wanted to bully others. As Yang Chun said, would it kill them to speak well? Chapter 766. When the 4 people were all lying on the ground with blood all over their bodies and couldn't move, Gong Sunling's figure appeared on the side. The sword in her hand flashed, and the guy who had just spoken rudely had his head directly fall to the ground. It was clean and tidy, without mercy. The guy who also said a word that was unpleasant to listen to at this moment was so scared that he could no longer speak. As for the master who dealt with Yang Chun at the beginning, his face was ashen. When Yang Chun talked to them politely, they didn't know how to cherish it. Their 2 companions also threatened Yang Chun and Gong Sunling to be slaves in cauldrons. This kind of thing could not be tolerated by anyone. The other party only let Gong Sunling take action alone, and the 4 of them were defeated and killed. The situation in front of them could not be good. Chi, Gong Sunling, under Yang Chen's training, did not have the kind of soft-heartedness she had before. Even if these opponents had fallen to the ground, each of them still added a sword, completely destroying any thoughts of luck. I'm a little curious now. Who is your master? Yang Chun sat there, still holding a glass of wine, and did not even mean to get up. He just calmly looked at the 3 living guys who were thrown by Gong Sunling on the ground not far away, and asked slowly, "Since you're interested in my wife, I am not talented, but I have to know your name?" While Yang Chun was asking questions, Gong Sunling had already happily taken off the Chinquin bag from the 4 people and began to check the spoils. With Yang Chun, Gong Sunling had done these things in the territory of the demon sections. Every time she did it, she was in high spirits and never tired of it. The 3 people lying on the ground were basically useless. He was still alive. That was because of Gong Sunling's mercy. It must be known that Gong Sunling's sword array was driven by the top grade spirit stone given by Yang Chun. Not to mention 4 peak Jidon stage masters. Even 4 Yuanying stage masters could fight for dozens of months without being exhausted. It was their bad luck to meet Gong Sunling. If you want to kill me or torture me, do as you please. At this point, the 3 of them no longer had the arrogance they had before. The guy who spoke also knew that he had no chance of survival, so he could only throw out some harsh words. Of course, even though he said those harsh words, he had already cursed the dead guy countless times in his heart. The other party was polite because they had the confidence, but he still wanted to capture the other party's wife and use her as a human cauldron. He was courting death, but he had implicated his companions. I'm a reasonable person. Yang Chun slowly took a sip of the Jade Dragon wine, and then added another cup. Actually, I don't like to use any means to make people talk. The slow voice at this moment had an unspeakable pressure that made the three people lying on the ground unable to resist. Who is your lord? I only need to go to the place where you said you can't go to know, so your insistence is actually meaningless. Yang Chun took a piece of unknown monster meat and drank a small cup of Jade Dragon wine. Then he looked up and said, "For me, it's actually a matter of knowing sooner or later. Of course, you can also not say it. I'm not in a hurry." Yang Chun then said slowly, "I admire your loyalty to his lord, but since your lord is still in retreat, he must be afraid of being disturbed. I don't have any other strengths, but I still have the ability to make some noise. Now, can you tell me who's inside?" After saying all this, Yang Chun didn't care about the reaction of the three people and directly said his own requirements. "My master is the alchemist Gao Jing." Finally, the guy in the middle opened his mouth. "The master is refining an important medicinal pill there and can't be disturbed. We were in the wrong earlier. Please forgive us if we have offended you. We hope that you can understand. Alchemy in this kind of place where birds don't shit?" Yang Chun was stunned and asked strangely, "What's the point? There's not even a spiritual vein. How many spirit stones will be lost?" Since the other party spoke, Gong Sunling also stopped her movements and returned to Yang Chen's side. Obviously, she was also attracted by this question, because alchemy in a certain place here has a higher success rate than other places. The three guys on the ground haven't been born yet, and a strange voice came in. Then, a figure suddenly appeared opposite Yang Chun and Gong Sunling, standing a few steps behind the three people on the ground. The one who appeared was a Yuanying stage master, standing proudly opposite Yang Chun and Gong Sunling. It seemed that he didn't care about answering Yang Chen's question at all. He just looked down at the three guys lying on the ground and turned his head to look at the one who had died not far away. He frowned and scolded, "Useless things. It turns out that you are their master." Yang Chun still didn't mean to stand up. He looked up at the Yuanying stage master who suddenly appeared and shook his head. "Forgive me for my poor eyes. I can't see where you look like an alchemist. Of course, they don't dare to tell you my identity." The Yuanying stage master who appeared later seemed to have felt that he had already eaten Yang Chun and Gong Sunling. He also said slowly, "I don't let you in. It's for your own good. But since you don't want to do it the hard way, then don't blame this old man for being ruthless. You killed the third brother, which shows that your cultivation base is not bad. In this case, you will replace the position of the third brother and be a slave to this old man." The Yuanying stage master stared at Yang Chun and seemed to be talking about something trivial. His eyes then turned to Gong Sunling. "This girl is not bad. This old man is still missing a furnace concubine. In this wilderness, it can also be more fun." The Yuanying stage master did not give Yang Chun and Gong Sunling a chance to speak again. When he said these words, it was as if it was natural. Yang Chun and Gong Sunling had been at his mercy. The tone of command was not concealed. "Are you done?" Yang Chun sat in the chair and did not move his buttocks, staring at the Yuanying stage master. "I'm done." The Yuanying stage master sneered and said, "This old man usually only gives people one chance. Don't miss it." Sure enough, what kind of master is what kind of servant? Yang Chun also sneered. This guy appeared arrogant, and he told Yang Chun that alchemy here could increase the success rate. Obviously, he did not intend to let Yang Chun and Gong Sunling go back. However, in the same way, Yang Chun had long discovered the existence of this guy. Until now, he just wanted to know why. Since he knew that there was something weird about alchemy here, it was obviously related to the medicine nourishing gourd. At this point, this guy was no longer useful. Raising his hand, Yang Chun made a goodbye gesture. The other party was stunned, and then a gray light, lightning from the bottom to the Yuanying stage master. Chapter 767. Gong Sunling had already been reminded by Yang Chun. When the three of them spoke, she quietly returned to Yang Chen's side. And near the location where the Yuanying stage master appeared, she left her own praying mantis puppet on the ground. The praying mantis puppet was discovered by Yang Chun and Sun Qingxue in a secret plane, all of which had a peak Yuanying stage cultivation base. Yang Chun gave it to many people in the sect. His master and senior apprentice sister each had one. The refined puppet was later re-refined by Wang Yong, and its power was almost comparable to the cultivation base of the praying mantis. Moreover, the puppet itself did not have any vitality. It was still of the earth attribute, hidden under the ground, without a strong spiritual awareness like Yang Chun. Even if he stood on it, it was impossible to find it. Yang Chun waved his hand, and Gong Sunling controlled the praying mantis puppet to attack. The main means of attack of these praying mantises was the two knife arms, and when they were waved, they were extremely fast. Even when Yang Chun first entered the secret plane, he was almost beheaded, and he had to use his body protection magic weapon to keep his life. Although the Yuanying stage master who appeared was arrogant, his strength was not so good. There was neither a Deshang stage master like Sun Qingxue to prepare a body protection magic weapon, nor Yang Chen's powerful body protection method. The two knife arms had already crossed the body of the Yuanying stage master, and he reacted. But no matter what reaction he had, it was too late. The praying mantis swiped two knives, a vertical knife and a horizontal knife, and the other side was cut into 4 sections. When the 4 pieces of bloody corpses fell to the ground, the 3 people on the ground did not have any reaction. When they finally understood what had happened, the 3 people couldn't help but scream. They couldn't help but be shocked. Their master, the savior in their hearts, was killed in front of them like this, and they didn't even have the chance to escape. Was there anything more that made them feel fear and despair than this? However, their screams did not last long. The praying mantis puppet casually swung its blade and cut the 3 people lying on the ground into 6 pieces. The screams stopped abruptly. Gong Sunling went to clean up the Qianquan bag of the Yuanying stage master, and Yang Chun was thinking about whether the discovery of the alchemist was related to the medicine nourishing gourd. According to reason, this was neither a place with abundant spiritual power nor a place rich in elixir. In addition to the medicine nourishing gourd, Yang Chun could not think of any reason to improve the success rate of refining elixir. Obviously, he didn't know the real reason, or perhaps he didn't have the time to find out the real reason. The Yuanying stage master and the 4 slaves appeared here. It was estimated that they were also here to ask the alchemist for a pill. Sealing this place was definitely to allow that alchemist to concoct pills better, but their luck was not good. In this kind of place where even birds lay eggs, there was actually an expert like Yang Chun and Gong Sunling appearing. The purpose of this trip was for the medicine nourishing gourd, and Yang Chun certainly would not leave this kind of thing to others. Even if others found out, Yang Chun would not hesitate to rob others. There was no one in front, and soon Yang Chun arrived at the place where the medicine nourishing gourd was. As Yang Chun expected, on the top of the mountain, a Yuanying stage alchemist was sitting on a flat ground, carefully controlling a seemingly good pill furnace, and it seemed that he had reached the critical moment. It seems that this person should be the alchemist Gao Jing in those people's mouths. There were few people here. Gao Jing was so absorbed that he did not notice who the person was. After waiting for a while, it seemed that an important juncture had just passed. The alchemist breathed a sigh of relief and looked up just to see Yang Chun and Gong Sunling in the distance. It was not the Yuanying stage master that he was familiar with. Gao Jing's heart was shocked, and the pill furnace in his hand was out of control. With a bang, the pill furnace burst into a roar, and a black smoke came out of the pill furnace. This batch of elixirs was completely wasted. Gao Jing's mind was sharp, and it was not his old friend who appeared at this moment, but 2 strangers. His old friend received a message not long ago to deal with the guy who broke into the mountain, but now he has not come back. What happened, it can almost be concluded. Not caring about the dregs in the pill furnace, Gao Jing put away the pill furnace with the fastest action, and then turned around and ran without looking back. He also seemed to have a good flying magic weapon in his hand, and instantly escaped dozens of miles away. He is smart. Yang Chun took Gong Sunling and landed on the flat ground where Gao Jing was refining pills. As soon as his nose sniffed, the smell of the dregs entered his nose. Danyang grass, flying dragon fruit. Humph. This is to refine a fixed spirit pill. The medicinal power has been integrated, condensed, and not scattered. The second-grade spirit pill has not been successful. After a series of medicinal names were said, Yang Chun could already judge what kind of medicinal pill the other party was refining. The second-grade spirit pill can't control the fire in time. A little shock will ruin the furnace. I think the level is not very good. At most, it is the level of a third-grade alchemist master. The name of Gao Jing. Yang Chun had never heard of it in his previous life. It could be seen that he was not a great person. A third-grade alchemist master. Yang Chun could not afford to offend. This was where the medicine-nourishing gourd was, but obviously the other party did not find this. It was no wonder that standing here, no matter how the spiritual awareness explored, it could not detect any abnormalities, and it was normal not to find it. It was already a great opportunity to be able to detect a higher success rate of alchemy here. This is where you said the medicine-nourishing gourd is. Gong Sunling looked around, looked carefully, explored with spiritual awareness, couldn't find the medicine-nourishing gourd, and couldn't feel the aura of any magic weapon. She couldn't help but have some doubts. Of course, Yang Chun was also puzzled, but soon understood the location of the medicine-nourishing gourd, and answered Gong Sunling with certainty. After Gong Sunling looked at it again, she still didn't find anything. She could only ask Yang Chun, "Where is it?" "It's under our feet," Yang Chun replied with a smile, pointing to the position under his feet. Here, Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness quickly explored the bottom and continued to explore for dozens of feet without finding the slightest abnormality. Once again, she cast a confused look at Yang Chun, waiting for Yang Chun's explanation. "You fly a little farther, you may see it more clearly." Yang Chun smiled and pointed. Gong Sunling said nothing and immediately sacrificed the ship and flew far away. She carefully looked at the foot of Yang Chun and finally found a clue. The mountain peak under Yang Chun's feet, one side sharp and thick, looked round, and there was a ring-shaped gully washed out by the mountain torrents near the mountainside. Looking from a distance, it was clearly a gourd that was enlarged many times. Chapter 768. The magic weapon in Gong Sunling's concept was the kind that could be controlled in the hands. Even if she had seen a big one, it was only such as her own ship, Yang Chun's shuttle, and so on. If it was bigger, it would be Gao Yu's De Shang stage puppet, which was restored to its original size of hundreds of feet. That was already the largest magic weapon Gong Sunling had ever seen. Although she knew that the size of the magic weapon could be changed with the owner's mind, this size was also limited to a certain range, and it was not too exaggerated. But now, Gong Sunling discovered that her heart was still not big enough, and she still couldn't imagine how outrageous the magic weapon was. Even if her own mountain river geographical map could draw the whole world, the body was only a painting axis that was more than 10 feet long and a few feet wide. How could she think that there could be such an outrageous magic weapon? A mountain peak, hundreds of feet high, stretching almost hundreds of miles in length. Such a huge mountain peak turned out to be a magic weapon. This made Gong Sunling shocked, and she also began to reflect on her own lack of realm. Who stipulated that the magic weapon could not be very big? Gong Sunling instantly understood this. She was a smart person, and she suddenly realized something. On the ship, she sat down directly and began to retreat. Yang Chun rushed up without saying a word, threw a questioning inner heart pill into Gong Sunling's mouth, and then sat beside her to protect her. It was rare to have this kind of epiphany opportunity. Yang Chun certainly would not let Gong Sunling miss it. Gao Jing had been scared away, and there would be no one to disturb him in a short time. He didn't know how long Gong Sunling's retreat would take, and Yang Chun simply began to collect the medicine-nourishing gourd. Before collecting, Yang Chun still made sufficient preparations. 24 Punlai Divine Wood Monsters, directly in accordance with the position of the heavenly cycle constellation Great Array, surrounded Gong Sunling and the ship. The Panlai Divine Wood monsters were already at the peak foundation stage at this time. Under the nourishment of the first Wood true essence spiritual solution, they would be able to attack the Jiadan stage in a few years. The 24 Panlai Divine Wood monsters were connected. Once the heavenly cycle constellation Great Formation was arranged, even if it was a master of the middle Yuanying stage, it would not necessarily be able to take advantage. The strength of the tree demon could be seen from Guei Shanyu. The Panlai Divine Wood tree demon and Yang Chun had a master-servant connection. Once someone broke into this circle, Yang Chun would know immediately. In the middle of the heavenly cycle constellation formation, Wan Qian's 5 female disciples arranged the 5 beautiful girls formation, which also protected Gong Sunling and the ship. Even if there was a strong enemy, Gong Sunling would not be harmed. After arranging all this, Yang Chun began to collect the medicine nourishing gourd. Previously, Yang Chun had not come to collect it because his cultivation was not high enough. At that time, the immortal who left the medicine nourishing gourd said that if Yang Chen's cultivation base was not at the Yuanying stage, he should never expect to be able to collect it. Now Yang Chen's spiritual power had condensed in. According to the calculation of the sky measuring ruler, his spiritual power cultivation base had reached more than 3,000 degrees, far exceeding the limit of the general Yuanying stage master. It was more than enough to collect the medicine nourishing gourd. However, Yang Chun was still well prepared. Even if he had the formula to collect it, he was not a real Yuanying stage master. In terms of spiritual power mobilization, there was still a certain gap with the Yuanying stage master. Therefore, after Yang Chun prepared a lot of 7th metal true essence liquid, he moved the medicine nourishing gourd. The method of collection was very complicated. The complete method required Yang Chun to continuously complete hundreds of talismans, and each time, it required Yang Chun to exhaust his whole body's spiritual power to condense a talisman. It would take more than a day's time to do so. The Yuanying stage was the lowest level that could collect the medicine nourishing gourd, but it did not mean that the Yuanying stage would be able to collect it. For anyone else, even if they reached the Yuanying stage, it would not be an easy task to condense such a talisman. To control the spiritual power of the whole body and condense it into a delicate talisman, without the control of the Yuanying stage, or even the peak Yuanying stage, it was almost impossible to condense successfully. This was not only the need for spiritual power, but also the extreme requirements for control. The medicine nourishing gourd was used by the alchemist, and for the alchemist, being able to control the fire of alchemy was the most basic skill. What the medicine nourishing gourd needed was at least the 3rd grade alchemist who could control the fire to refine the 3rd grade spirit pill. If this could not be done, there was no qualification to use the medicine nourishing gourd. At this point, Yang Chun was very clear, and he himself had met this requirement. Even so, the condensation of each talisman was still pouring all of Yang Chen's thoughts, which was almost the limit that Yang Chun could do in this case. It took Yang Chun a day and a half to condense each talisman successfully, and this was still under the continuous supplement of the 7th metal true essence liquid. If this was not the case, in this place with a lack of spiritual power, either a lot of medicinal pills or a lot of spirit stones would be used. Otherwise, as long as dozens of talismans were condensed, the people who wanted to collect it could be squeezed dry. This was another test. As an alchemist, either the medicinal pills were sufficient or very rich. These 2 points could be regarded as a real alchemist. The little guys who had just learned a little bit of the way of alchemy were completely unqualified. With the support of a huge amount of 7th metal true essence liquid, Yang Chun hardly needed to rest and could condense a talisman one after another. Every time a talisman was condensed, Yang Chun would put it into the mountain peak. What surprised people was that Yang Chun had already put in almost 100 talismans, but the mountain that should be the medicine nourishing gourd had no change, which made people doubt whether this mountain was really the medicine nourishing gourd. If it wasn't for the alchemist Gao Jing who found that the success rate of alchemy here would increase, even Yang Chun would doubt this. However, with the confirmation of that guy before, Yang Chun was already very sure that this mountain was the real medicine nourishing gourd. Gong Sunling finally woke up after 2 years, and the spiritual power of the whole body skyrocketed. With this realization, she directly broke through the bottleneck of the early Jiedan stage and entered the middle Jiedan stage. From the beginning of the Jiedan stage to the present breakthrough, Gong Sunling spent almost 50 years. A genius was a genius, the cold plum fairy Shi Shanshan. In this hurdle, it took almost the same time to enter the middle Jiedan stage. The gap between Gong Sunling and Shi Shanshan was greatly reducing. After waking up and finding Yang Chen's action, Gong Sunling did not disturb Yang Chun, but looked for opportunities to let Yang Chun know that she woke up so that he did not have to worry. Then Gong Sunling began to quietly cultivate, silently waiting for the day when Yang Chun finished collecting. Chapter 769. 3 years later, Yang Chun finally condensed the last talisman and put it into the mountain peak. With the last talisman in, Yang Chen's body suddenly felt a huge suction, accompanied by the scream of Gong Sunling. His body involuntarily entered a certain space. This was a very huge space, which was like a lattice, divided into countless small spaces, densely packed, at least tens of millions of them. Yang Chun understood that this space was the interior of the medicine nourishing gourd, because it was filled with a medicinal fragrance that Yang Chun was familiar with, which was very strong. As long as Yang Chen's mind moved, he could appear in any grid. Yang Chen knew that in each grid, one kind of medicinal pill could be stored. The spirit medicine preserved here did not need to use talismans to block the medicinal properties. The medicinal qi would not be released, and the medicinal effect would be better and better because of the nourishment of the magic weapon. Originally, Yang Chun thought that there would be a lot of peerless medicinal pills in it, but what disappointed Yang Chun was that despite the medicinal fragrance, under the sweep of spiritual awareness, Yang Chun did not find any trace of the spirit medicine. It seemed that the owner of the medicine nourishing gourd just left the gourd and did not leave any spirit medicine. However, among these grids, it was not empty. At least in the millions of grids, there were some black dreg-like things. With Yang Chen's experience, he recognized at a glance that these black things were dregs. But Yang Chun still didn't understand. Such a powerful medicine, nourishing gourd, did not put medicinal pills, but put so many dregs. What was the reason? The surprise was always at the end. In the innermost grid, there were hundreds of jade slips. When Yang Chun first discovered it, he couldn't believe his eyes. In the medicine nourishing gourd, there were so many jade slips. Could it be a peerless pill recipe? Yang Chun picked up a piece, his spiritual awareness explored, and carefully looked at the content. Very soon, Yang Chun was a little disappointed. This jade slip only recorded the changes of some common medicinal herbs under various fire conditions, as well as the changes of some medicinal herbs that were incompatible with each other. According to Yang Chen's current level of alchemy, after referring to the Lao Jundan Sutra and the Yundan Sutra left by several immortals, these things were simple for Yang Chun. These simple medicinal materials, Yang Chun could control the most perfect heat at any time, and there would be no mistakes at all. However, as Yang Chun picked up more and more jade slips and browsed through them, Yang Chun's expression became more and more cautious and serious. The contents recorded on these jade slips were basically the same. The only difference was the type of medicine. Towards the end, there were some simple combinations of pill recipes, but the contents were all about the changes in medicinal ingredients under various fire conditions, and most of the time, it was a record of failure. But Yang Chun began to pay attention to it, and he was careful to hold the jade slips as if they were peerless treasures. Yang Chun couldn't help but pay attention to it. He now discovered from the things recorded on these jade slips that he seemed to have taken a wrong route on the road of alchemy. Despite the Lao Jundan Sutra, the Yundan Sutra, the pill recipes of the spiritual world and the immortal world, and the memory of Yang Chen's own fire attribute spirit root, the control of fire could be said to be extraordinary. All of this, with the power of the profound spirit furnace, Yang Chun could almost be said to be the most powerful alchemist master in the mortal world. There were many medicinal pills that could prove this, whether it was the heaven-seizing pill, the questioning inner heart pill, or the second-grade inner sensing pill, the black tiger yuan raising pill, the black tiger calming pill, and the chi seeking pill. These could prove that Yang Chun was definitely a senior alchemist master. Even Yang Chun himself thought so before. Almost every furnace of medicinal pills that Yang Chun refined had never failed. All were successes. At most, the quality of the medicinal pills was different, and the number of medicinal pills released was different. He had never failed to refine a furnace of medicinal pills. But after reading the records on these jade slips, Yang Chun suddenly discovered that he was not a senior alchemist master in the strict sense. The reason was that Yang Chun had never failed to refine any medicinal pills. This reason sounded ridiculous, but Yang Chun knew that all of this was because of the memory of Yang Chun's previous life. However, Yang Chun was just a very ordinary alchemist master in his previous life. Perhaps an ordinary alchemist master in the heavenly court could indeed be a senior alchemist master in the mortal world, but this does not mean that Yang Chun could still have such an advantage after ascending. If it was a pill recipe that Yang Chun had never heard of, and some medicinal materials that Yang Chun had never touched, whether Yang Chun could still maintain such a level, even Yang Chun himself could not guarantee it. These detailed jade slips told Yang Chun vividly how a real alchemy master grew up. For each kind of medicinal material, this master had tested it with a variety of different fires under different circumstances, what kind of mistakes would be formed and what kind of consequences would result. Similarly, the same was true for the experiments in those pill recipes. What kind of mistakes would occur in the combination of different medicinal materials under different circumstances? This was the embodiment of the real basic skills of alchemy. As the saying goes, failure is also a kind of experience. The smooth sailing situation is bound to not last too long. No one is an exception. There will always be setbacks and failures one day. Being able to learn from failure, that was the most correct attitude. On the way of alchemy, what Yang Chun lacked was precisely failure. Because with the memory of his previous life, Yang Chun did not know too much about what kind of failure he might encounter on the way of alchemy. Now in the mortal world, Yang Chun can still pretend to be a master, but when he really goes to the spiritual world and goes to the immortal world, Yang Chun will definitely reveal his true colors. What was recorded on these jade slips was the valuable alchemy experience of the immortal, and there were many failures. Some even deliberately failed to learn the changes in medicinal power under different circumstances. As for the dregs in the grid, it was the result of these failures. Every experiment, there was a pile of corresponding dregs left. In the medicine nourishing gourd, these dregs were also perfectly preserved, ready for Yang Chun to study at any time. Now in the eyes of Yang Chun, even if the grid was full of peerless elixirs, it was not as precious as this pile of dregs. With these, Yang Chun could make up for his lack of knowledge of medicinal materials to the greatest extent, so that Yang Chun could consolidate the foundation that he lacked the most. Even if someone took thousands of Taishang Laojuan's 9 Revolutions golden pill to exchange, Yang Chun would never be willing to exchange these dregs now. Until this moment, Yang Chun really understood what kind of alchemy cultivation path he should take. Chapter 770. A series of talismans came out. Yang Chun had actually completely mastered the medicine nourishing gourd. Soon, Yang Chun appeared in the same place, and there was a small purple-red gourd in his hand. The mountain that stretched for hundreds of miles on the opposite side disappeared without a trace at this moment, showing a huge valley, as if the mountain had never appeared. Gong Sunling found that Yang Chun was missing, and she was very worried for a while, but found that the 5 women around her did not make any movements, and she was a little relieved. After waiting for more than half a day, Yang Chun finally appeared. Although she had guessed that Yang Chun was going to collect the medicine nourishing gourd, Gong Sunling still threw herself into Yang Chun's arms after seeing Yang Chun. It seemed that only in the arms of Yang Chun, smelling the familiar smell of Yang Chun, and feeling his warm embrace, could she be completely at ease. Soon, Gong Sunling's attention was on the purple-red gourd in Yang Chun's hand. After looking at it for a while, she reached out and touched it, and asked curiously, this is the medicine-nourishing gourd you mentioned? Is it very powerful? Of course. Yang Chun showed this with practical actions. When a merit ring was opened, all the medicinal pills flew out, and then they were sucked into the gourd. There were dozens of medicinal pills wrapped in layers of talismans that Gong Sunling was familiar with, broke the talismans in front of her, and then flew into the gourd. Gong Sunling was stunned on the spot. That was clearly the second-grade questioning inner heart pill. She just took one before the retreat and naturally recognized it. However, although Yang Chun said that the questioning inner heart pill was not a precious thing, Gong Sunling still felt very precious in her mind. But when she really saw this scene, she was still very shocked. It turned out that Yang Chun had so many second-grade questioning inner heart pills in his hands. No wonder when he gave these things to them, they were all ordinary things. Just looking at the medicinal pills that flew into the medicine-nourishing gourd for a while, the value was already immeasurable. Gong Sunling sighed again. It seemed that the realization she got before, because the medicine-nourishing gourd was too big, seemed to be not enough. She should try to think in the most impossible places. Are these all second-grade, questioning inner heart pills? Seeing it and not daring to confirm, it was too shocking. Gong Sunling asked aloud. Both. Yang Chun smiled and said, I've said it before, it's not something precious. Just tell me when you need it. In the end, as if wanting more, Yang Chun added, there's still a lot of raw materials. You don't have to save them for me. After using up this batch of second job revolutions, we will refine third job revolutions in the future. These words made Gong Sunling stunned. It seemed that the boundaries of her imagination were not enough. Not to mention fantasy, the fact had not reached the boundary. If you can come up with another heaven-seizing pill, I will believe that there is nothing impossible in this world. Gong Sunling looked at Yang Chun and said this sentence. It must be said that this was Gong Sunling's exclamation, but Yang Chun looked at Gong Sunling very strangely. The meaning revealed in his eyes seemed to be, how do you know? And Gong Sunling was shocked. You don't really have a heaven-seizing pill, do you? Gong Sunling was shocked and asked this question with a horrified face. Senior sister, you really know how to count? Yang Chun shook his head helplessly and sighed. Then, a jade box appeared in front of the two of them. On the jade box, the lines of an array were engraved, and the surface was shining. At a glance, it was obvious that it was an array that was working. With Gong Sunling's eyesight, of course, she could see at a glance that this array could not only seal the medicinal effect, but also trap the things inside the box. Yang Chun opened the jade box without hesitation, and then there were dense, shining talismans inside. Inside was another small jade box. There was also an array engraved on it, and the effect was still the same. The small jade box was opened again, and there were still talismans inside, and there was a small jade box inside. At this time, Yang Chun said, inside is the heaven-seizing pill that you mentioned. You. Gong Sunling stretched out her hand to cover her surprised cherry mouth. After the 3 consecutive you words, she could hardly say anything else. Finally, after reacting for a while, she was shocked and asked, did you refine 2 heaven-seizing pills for Elder Wu Xiong? 1. Yang Chun opened the jade box, and a cyan pill covered with dragon patterns appeared in front of Gong Sunling. This is the one that was refined for Elder Wu Xiong. It seemed that the shackles around him had been lifted, and the pill suddenly turned into a cyan dragon shadow, intending to fly away. But how could Yang Chun make this kind of mistake? As early as before opening the jade box, his spiritual awareness had already filled the surroundings, and this space was firmly locked. The dragon shadow flashed, but it was still in the same place, but it kept flashing and moving like a living thing. Controlling the medicine-nourishing gourd, Yang Chun slowly sucked the heaven-seizing pill into the gourd. It seemed that it was good for itself to be in the gourd. The heaven-seizing pill did not struggle and quickly disappeared in the mouth of the gourd. Elder Wu Xiong had experience and confidence because he resisted the wind tribulation for the heaven-seizing pill, so he didn't use the heaven-seizing pill at all when he ascended. Yang Chun sent the heaven-seizing pill into the gourd and breathed a sigh of relief. He continued to explain to Gong Sunling. Anyway, Elder Wu Xiong kept it useless, so he gave it to me as a reward for refining the pill. Even though Gong Sunling had seen the magical heaven-seizing pill appear with her own eyes, there was still a feeling of not believing her eyes. How could this happen? How could it happen? Yang Chun found Wang Yong and asked him for the heaven-seizing pill before he collected the medicine nourishing gourd. This heaven-seizing pill was congenitally deficient, so it did not go through the wind tribulation. It was completed with the help of Elder Wu Xiong, and it could not be regarded as a complete heaven-seizing pill. The medicine nourishing gourd could not only maintain the medicine qi, but also nourish the medicinal pill. Because of this, Yang Chun decided to raise the heaven-seizing pill in the medicine nourishing gourd. Maybe before Wang Yong ascended, this heaven-seizing pill could slowly improve the quality and restore to the most complete medicinal power. Gong Sunling's comprehension was very good, but she was limited by her knowledge. Even if the retreat was successful, she still artificially set a boundary for herself. Even if this boundary was getting bigger and bigger, it was still within the limit after all. This time, when she saw Yang Chen's second-grade questioning inner heart pill and saw the questioning inner heart pill appear in front of her, Gong Sunling suddenly realized another truth. It turned out that in the world of cultivation, there was nothing that couldn't be done. Chapter 771. The understanding of this thought made Gong Sunling's state of mind improve again. Before, she thought that she had understood something, but now she found out that she was still a frog at the bottom of the well. The reality was more exaggerated than imagined. It had to be said that going out to gain experience was indeed a very reasonable thing. This time, Gong Sunling was completely free from the shackles of imagination. In the future, the sea was wide and the sky was high. There was nothing that could limit Gong Sunling's imagination. After collecting all the medicinal pills of Yang Chun into the medicine nourishing gourd, both of them had a huge harvest. There was nothing left to miss here, and soon the two embarked on the way back. After going out for 3.5 years, Yang Chun and Gong Sunling did not know that the marriage proposal of the head of the palace to the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect had caused an uproar in the Dao sections. If it was in the past, if Chunyang Palace dared to make such a request, the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect would definitely directly send a few masters to Chunyang Palace and uproot the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace, leaving nothing behind. Insulting people was not so blatant, right? However, the current Chunyang Palace and Yangchun were not the same as before, so that in the case of knowing the intention of the head of the palace, the two major sects put on a grand reception ceremony, which was only the etiquette for treating the distinguished guests of the sect. The proposal of the head of the palace was very formal. Not only did the head of the palace personally go to the two major sects, but he also brought 2 elders with generous betrothal gifts. When the news came out, there was an uproar. Whether it was the Green Jade Immortal Island or the Blue Cloud sect, they did not give an answer to the head of the palace on the spot. Both sides had to discuss with their respective disciples and ask the 2 disciples for their own opinions before giving an answer. This was the proper attitude. Whether it was Shi Shanshan or Sun Qingxue, both of them held high positions in the sect. They were the most valued disciples in the sect. An elder or the sect leader would never order them to sacrifice their lives for the sake of their own future. Moreover, such a major event would definitely involve the relationship between the sect. The Lord Tantai and sect master Lu could not make a decision on their own. They always had to discuss it with the elders. Among them, the betrothal gifts offered by the head of the palace also played a great role. Several second-grade questioning inner heart pills and second-grade inner sensing pills. The 2 major sects had a few second-grade questioning inner heart pills, but they were reluctant to use them. As for the second-grade inner sensing pill, except for Chunyang Palace, no other sect had it. All of them were resources exclusively produced by Chunyang Palace, and the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect had to carefully consider it. In the past, the 2 major sects forced Chunyang Palace to give an answer, but now it was reversed. Chunyang Palace was waiting for the 2 major sects to give an answer to themselves. In fact, The marriage proposal also clearly showed the attitude of Chunyang Palace. The next step was to see whether the two major sects would accept it or not. Others may think that this was a demonstration by Chunyang Palace, but the two major sects actually knew that this was also a compromise made by Chunyang Palace in order not to destroy the relationship between the three parties. Otherwise, Yang Chun could only marry his master and senior sister, and the two major sects would have nothing to say. Sun Qingshua's attitude was almost needless to say. From the beginning, she took the initiative to follow Yang Chun. Even if she already knew about Shi Shanshan's affairs, she never flinched. Shi Shanshan, because of a strange combination of circumstances, misjudged the strength of Yang Chun at the beginning, but later in the contact with Yang Chun, she also gradually had a tacit understanding, and there was a breakthrough in their relationship. Moreover, Shi Shanshan also vowed that she would not marry anyone else, which seemed to mean that she agreed. The attitude of the two women was basically clear to the sect. However, if Yang Chun was allowed to hold the beauty, wouldn't it seem that the two major sects were too unbearable? How could they be so easy to talk to? For Yang Chun, the senior executives of the two major sects were very appreciative and even regretful that such a disciple was not in their own sect. In recent years, from Yang Chun, the two major sects have also gained a lot of benefits. The medicinal pills, the eighth metal true secret art, and the underwater elixirs made the two major sects happy. Not to mention the recent secret plane incident. These were enough to make the two major sects' senior executives nod their heads. What's more, after the Black Tiger predecessor visited the two major sects, he also left a revelation to them. Yang Chun seemed to be able to treat the injuries of the masters of the Deshang stage. The general injuries of the masters of the Deshang stage would hardly care too much. Their cultivation base was enough to heal themselves. However, if the injury was serious to a certain extent, it was not something that could be solved by cultivation base. The Black Tiger predecessor's decadent waiting for death for hundreds of years was a clear proof. Yang Chun could treat the injuries of the masters of the Deshang stage. Although these injured masters were not obedient masters, they were still masters of the Deshang stage. Weren't they the top fighting force in the mortal world? No matter how disobedient they were, they wouldn't betray the sect, right? What's more, after such an experience, the island master and the sect master gave up their face and asked someone to help them treat their injuries. In any case, there would be a little change in their attitude. Because several masters had died, their overall strength was no longer enough to compete with the island master and the sect master. After they were cured, they wouldn't be able to set off much of a storm. The most important thing was that when they reached the Deshang stage, the idea of fighting for power and profit would eventually fade unless there was no hope of ascension. But the problem was that the sect master and the island master had the questioning inner heart pill in their hands, and the second grade questioning inner heart pill, which was definitely a good thing that could make people ascend. In this case, they would never have any second thoughts. Therefore, the two major sects still needed Yang Chun to help treat them. This led to no matter what the situation was, it was not appropriate to fall out with the Chunyang Palace. Their own disciples were happy, and the sect also needed to ask Yang Chun. This matter was actually very easy to settle. However, the two major sects naturally had to have the face of the two major sects. The two sides had a tacit understanding to put forward a temporary way for the sect to step down, and at the same time, it also fulfilled the decision of Yang Chun and the two women. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect formally responded to the Chunyang Palace, and each made two requests. As long as Yang Chun could do it, then the two women would marry together. If Yang Chun couldn't do it, then when it was done, the two women would marry him. Of course, this request was made in the name of the Cold Plum Fairy and the Dancing Snow Fairy. If he wanted to accept both beauties, why didn't the two fairies make a small request? The requirement of the Cold Plum Fairy Shi Shanshan was that Yang Chun must be able to defeat her personally. Then she would commit herself to marry him. The requirement of the Dancing Snow Fairy Sun Qingxue was that Yang Chun must be able to refine a 5th grade medicinal pill. Both sides had a common requirement. That was after marrying, whether it was Gao Yugong Sun Ling or Shi Shanshan Sun Qingxue, there was no distinction between big and small. Everyone was a co-wife, and there was no such thing as a concubine. The reply was given very formally, and it was not concealed from anyone. As soon as the reply of the two major sects came out, it immediately caused a shock to the entire Tao sect. Chapter 772. What shocked everyone was that the two super sects, the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, actually allowed their talented disciples to commit to one person at the same time. Moreover, this person was only a disciple of a second-rate sect. Although he had some achievements in alchemy, it should not be enough to make people pay so much attention to him, right? What was equally shocking was the request put forward by the two fairies. There was no distinction between big and small. They were all equal wives. This was easy to do. Moreover, with the appearance and background of the two fairies, it was impossible for someone to take the two women as concubines. However, the other request of the two fairies was clearly making things difficult for him. Yang Chun must personally defeat the cold plum fairy Shi Shanshan, which in the eyes of many people was almost impossible. It must be known that when Yang Chun had not yet entered the Chunyang Palace and began to cultivate, Shi Shanshan had already reached the Jidan stage. After such a long time of cultivation, even Yang Chun had already entered the early Jidan stage, and Shi Shanshan had already entered the late Jidan stage, letting Yang Chun, a kid who had just entered the early Jidan stage, to challenge the famous Cold Plum Fairy who was famous for her fierce fighting. It was not known whether this was the Green Jade Immortal Island helping Yang Chun or deliberately embarrassing Yang Chun. Don't look at Shi Shanshan, who was only in the late Jidan stage, but in the past 100 years, Shi Shanshan has spent almost all of her time in battle. The masters of the Yuanying stage who died in her hands were not only one or two. Her rich combat experience was unmatched among the people of the same age. The combat power of Shi Shanshan could not be judged by the realm at all. People who knew Shi Shanshan's character knew that since Shi Shanshan made such a request, it meant that Shi Shanshan would never let go in the battle and would go all out. On the other hand, Cold Plum Fairy's opponent, Yang Chun, had fought against a Qi condensation cultivator on the heavenly stairway and had fought against the Taishaman Li Qingshun in a life and death duel. Although both duels ended in victory, everyone knew that Yang Chun was not an expert who was good at fighting. This could be seen from how Yang Chun admitted defeat every time he accepted a challenge. If he didn't have a guilty conscience, why would he admit defeat again and again? Saying that he was not suited to challenge others and only accepted duels to the death was the biggest joke in the world. Who didn't know that a life and death challenge could only be initiated by the one with the lower cultivation? Who wouldn't be afraid of a life and death battle with someone with a lower cultivation? Just by looking at Yang Chen's physique, one could tell that he was incomparably sturdy. It was obvious that he had won through strength. Against the experienced Shi Shanshan, relying on brute force would be courting death. Moreover, Yang Chun was famous for his alchemy. In this regard, Yang Chun did a very good job. No one could deny it. However, since he was so proficient in the way of alchemy, then in the way of fighting, he was slightly lacking. This was not incomprehensible. No one could be proficient in all the ways of cultivation. Don't look at Yang Chun, who has entered the Jidan realm, but everyone absolutely guessed that Yang Chun relied on his own refining of medicinal pills to advance. No one would doubt this point. It was common knowledge that those who relied on elixirs to advance their cultivation level would have a fighting strength. If they asked others, they would be ridiculed. Even some people among the Taishaman had such an understanding. Although the Taishaman had sent a lot of Yuanying stage masters to assassinate Yang Chun, they had not succeeded so far, but the people of the Taishaman felt that Yang Chun must have used medicinal pills to buy a few peerless masters to protect himself. Although Yang Chun was once chased by a master of the late Deshang stage and successfully escaped, these had nothing to do with Yang Chen's combat effectiveness. With such a huge gap in the combat effectiveness of the two sides, in the case of Shi Shanshan not letting go of the water, it was absolutely impossible for Yang Chun to defeat Shi Shanshan. Not to mention now, even in the distant future, it was impossible. Yang Chen's combat effectiveness would increase. Could it be that the cultivation genius Shi Shanshan would stay in the same place? What a joke. On the other side, the requirements of the dancing snow fairy Sun Qingxue were even more surprising. It sounds very simple. Any kind of medicinal pill could be refined in the 5th grade, but people who know the difficulty of alchemy would not think so. Not to mention how difficult it was to refine the 5th grade. Just one fact could clearly explain how difficult the problem faced by Yang Chun was. Throughout history, the highest level of alchemy master in the mortal world was only the 4th grade. The standard to be promoted to the 4th grade alchemy master was to be able to refine a certain kind of medicinal pill for the 4th grade. A certain kind of medicinal pill was not any medicinal pill. That is to say, as long as the simplest kind of medicinal pill was refined in the 4th grade, one could become a 4th grade alchemy master. The 5th grade refining, as long as it was successful, no matter what medicinal pill it was, it meant that the alchemy master had reached the realm of the 5th grade alchemy master. Since the highest level of alchemy master in a mortal world was only the 4th grade, then Yang Chun, who was not the most talented alchemy master, how could he become a 5th grade alchemy master? It was not so much that the cold plum fairy and the dancing snow fairy gave Yang Chun an opportunity. It was better to say that the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect used this way to tactfully refuse the marriage proposal of the Chunyang Palace. In this way, everyone did not hurt the harmony, and it was also a happy situation, except that Yang Chun would be a little depressed. Everyone thought so, except for Gao Yu and Gong Sungling. Even the head of the palace and the elders who knew some of the secrets of Yang Chun had the same thoughts. Defeat the cold plum fairy Shan Shan. Don't look at Yang Chun, who had killed the master of the Deshang stage, the 2nd city lord. Don't look at Yang Chun, who had killed 6 Taishimen's Yuanying stage masters. Don't look at Yang Chun, who had captured more than a dozen Yuanying stage and peak Jidan stage killers. However, if you wanted to defeat Shan Shan one-on-one, it seemed that everyone was not optimistic about Yang Chun. As for becoming a 5th grade alchemy master, it was an unprecedented problem. The palace master and several elders who received the replies from the 2 major sects even thought that the 2 major sects' euphemistic refusal. The head of the palace and the elders of the Chunyang Palace all had such thoughts, not to mention the onlookers who were waiting for the news. A toad wanting to eat swan meat. This was the consensus of everyone except the Chunyang Palace, that the Chunyang Palace wanted to propose a marriage for Yang Chun. Finally, they were worried about the face of the 2 major sects. No one dared to say it so blatantly. A second-rate sect, a small alchemy master, dared to think about this kind of good thing. The 2 major sects did not directly beat the person out. It was already giving face to everyone's cooperation in the past. Do you really think that the cold plum fairy and the dancing snow fairy can't find other Tao companions except you? After knowing this answer, many masters of the sect or rogue cultivators visited the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect to ask the 2 fairies for marriage. Chapter 773. Naturally, the attitude of these people was 1,000 times more sincere than that of Chunyang Palace. The children of their family were good-looking and focused. They would definitely treat the 2 fairies as treasures. Of course, the most correct attitude was that they only asked for 1 fairy and never expected to have both beauties. However, for these requests for marriage, the 2 major sects rejected all of them. This made many people's faces a little ugly, but for the 2 major sects, they didn't dare to do anything and could only endure it. Soon, some people realized their mistakes, and they were too hasty. The 2 major sects had just given a formal reply to Chunyang Palace, and Chunyang Palace hadn't said anything yet, so they came to their door, which was too unreasonable. Even if Yang Chun might not be able to meet the 2 conditions, at least they haven't done it yet. To defeat the cold plum fairy, they must first stand in front of the cold plum fairy and fight. To refine pills, they must also be prepared to refine. Chunyang Palace didn't do anything, so they thought that the 2 major sects had rejected Chunyang Palace. This was the mistake. After all, Chunyang Palace was still an ally of the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. At this time, they came to their door, obviously to provoke the relationship between the 3. Smart people should not do such stupid things. After recognizing the mistakes they had made, The people who came to ask for marriage no longer had any complaints about the rejection of the two great sections. The future was long, and after this matter was over, they could talk about asking for marriage. When Yang Chun and Gong Sunling returned to Chunyang Palace 3 months later, this matter had passed for more than 2 years. The wind outside had already faded a little. Yang Chun, things are a little troublesome. When Yang Chun and Gong Sunling met Gao Yu was also a little worried. Although Gao Yu still had absolute confidence in Yang Chun in her heart, this involved Yang Chen's reputation outside. Gao Yu was also a little worried. After listening to Gao Yu's story, Gong Sunling finally understood why Gao Yu felt that it was a little troublesome. However, after going out with Yang Chen this time, Gong Sunling suddenly felt that these two conditions were not completely impossible. This was not because Gong Sunling liked her Lang Jun, but because she completely understood that when there were some things that she didn't even dare to think about, she certainly couldn't do it. But once the shackles were removed, there seemed to be nothing absolute in this world. Don't worry, it's just a small matter. Yang Chen smiled and comforted his master. It's just 2 small requests. It can't be more difficult than finding a few dragon horns and dragon skin paintings, right? These words made Gao Yu feel 100 times more confident. At least in her cognition, Yang Chun has completed a lot of things that had never been done before. It seemed that it was not a big deal to have these 2 more. When he went to visit the head of the palace seemed to be a little sorry for Yang Chun. It seemed that he couldn't help Yang Chun win over the 2 women, so that he was absolutely ashamed of Yang Chun. The decision of the 2 sect, I can't understand it now. The head of the palace said truthfully to Yang Chun. He was now talking to Yang Chun in a tone that treated him as an equal. If outsiders saw it, they would definitely be surprised. The Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect did not intend to sever cooperation with Chunyang Palace, but they gave such a difficult problem to Yang Chun. Even the head of the palace could not see the meaning and did not understand how the 2 major sects considered it. Yang Chun had already thought about this problem before he came, but in his view, the 2 major sects did not mean to abandon Chunyang Palace now. Since that was the case, there must be something worth discussing about these 2 so-called conditions. Or perhaps there was something fishy about them. Let's wait and see. Yang Chen couldn't understand it for a while. He certainly didn't think that his cards had been seen through by the 2 major sects, so he couldn't guess this for the time being. After receiving the medicine nourishing gourd, Yang Chun stayed in the sect for the time being. The jade slips and dregs left in the medicine nourishing gourd were what Yang Chun dreamed of. Yang Chun needed a period of time to thoroughly digest and absorb these things and lay the foundation for himself to hit the peak of alchemy in the future. It was rare that Yang Chun did not retreat directly, but rushed directly to the medicinal hall and issued a task to the disciples of the sect through the sect to purchase a large number of ordinary medicinal materials for himself to experience that feeling. With Yang Chen's current ability to control fire, coupled with the hundreds of flames in the profound spirit furnace, Yang Chun could do a large number of medicinal materials at one time, but each medicinal material could be dispersed in different areas in the profound spirit furnace and refined with different flames, so that Yang Chun could fully and thoroughly understand the changes in medicinal properties under various circumstances. Without Yang Chen's abnormal spiritual awareness and fire control ability, without the powerful function of the profound spirit furnace, this could not be done at all. Yang Chun needed to consume a lot of medicinal materials, which was based on this consideration. At the beginning, of course, Yang Chun first remembered the contents recorded in the jade slips. At the same time, when reading the jade slips, he also carefully observed the corresponding dregs and wrote down the changes in those medicinal materials. However, after all, these were all recorded on the jade slips. When he really wanted to understand it, Yang Chun still needed to do a lot of experiments to personally experience it. Learning on paper was always shallow. He knew that this matter had to be practiced. If he didn't personally experience these things, no matter how much content he remembered, it was just an armchair strategist. It would take at least a few years to study this part of the content carefully, and the next experiment could be calculated in hundreds of years. Just after Yang Chun had just studied the jade slips in Chunyang Palace for more than a month, Cold Plum Fairy Shi Shanshan and Dancing Snow Fairy Sun Qingxue came to Chunyang Palace together to see Yang Chun. Sun Qingxue's face had a touch of sadness. When she saw Yang Chun, she seemed to be unable to control herself. She plunged into Yang Chun's arms and cried bitterly. There was no demeanor of a dancing snow fairy. I didn't mention the requirement of the 5th grade medicinal pill. It was the sect master who proposed it. Sun Qingxue was crying about this. How could she not be willing to marry Yang Chun? Even if she shared Yang Chun with several other women, Sun Qingxue was willing. It was just that she didn't know why sect master Lu actually put forward such a condition. As a disciple of Blue Cloud sect, Sun Qingxue had to take care of the sect master's face, which made Sun Qingxue in a dilemma. Cold Plum Fairy Shi Shanshan was more assertive than Sun Qingxue. When she saw Yang Chun, she still had the same indifferent look, but there seemed to be something more in her eyes. After Sun Qingxue finished speaking, Shi Shanshan said to Yang Chun, "It is indeed my own request to defeat me. I don't want my dual cultivation companion's cultivation base to always be under me and to be affected by gossip. This is not good for you or me.